Everyone see the agenda?
Yes.
Ah, cool. Yay. Still know how to do this.
All right. So Jose, I'm going to go ahead and get started.
Yeah, we are recording.
All right, good. Well, good evening, everybody. It's good to be here once again. We took a little bit of a break in August. This is the September Reston Planning and Zoning Committee meeting. There was a draft agenda that went out, and then I did modify this agenda a little bit. And I sent out a note earlier. We're going to have a pretty full slate tonight with two applications, and the first application being the Isaac Newton Square application. It is here for a vote tonight, even though this is their first time with us for the FDP plan. This is a plan that was conceptual development plan was previously approved by this committee and by the county, and now they've come in with basically an infrastructure plan. So it's a partial FDP. So I think, and the applicants, they weren't sure if this kind of infrastructure FDP even needed to come before our committee. And when they approached me, I reassured them that absolutely this did and warranted that. So I think that caught them a little bit behind. My understanding, their planning commission hearing is Wednesday, but we'll just see how things go tonight. I think a lot of the documentation you had seen came to you with Andrew Painter's name on it, and I understand Andrew's under the weather tonight, so I think we have the team Elizabeth Baker from Walsh Colucci, and then Bernard, and then Fred is here on behalf of the applicant, I believe, and maybe among some others. So the last thing I'll say is I moved all the kind of the administrative type stuff to the end of the agenda tonight. Most of that stuff was thinking we only had one application when that was first written, and there's some things we could certainly push off till October. And then also, I don't believe I've seen any meeting minutes from the last meeting, so we can talk about that at the end and then figure out, how to best distribute those and get those approved at a later time. So with that,
Rob, could I interject one thing while
sure,
everybody's still on the meeting? Please put forward to any applicant coming before us to include a digital link. They're going to send a small copy and not full-size plans. We need that digital to be able to read the fine print. Thank you.
Yeah, so real quick, Tammy brings up a really good point, and it is something that was going to talk about in the administrative section. We did just put some new notation in our website in the application, asking applicants to always give an electronic copy or at least a link. And then we as a group need to decide if we still want full-size paper copies, half-size paper copies, or electronically. And so we'll talk about that again at another time, but it is an ongoing issue where we do have to really get an electronic version no matter what. And I think most of the applicants have that available anyway. I do know, let's see, I see a couple people that have popped on. I'm pretty sure Mike Jennings was not able to join us tonight, and Matt definitely was a no-show tonight, but it looks like we have pretty much almost everybody else. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Elizabeth Baker, I believe, is going to lead the presentation for the Isaac Newton Square. I do want to say with these two applications tonight, we do want to keep not only the applicants, presentation relatively, to the, small as it can be, but also, committee members, just please be very succinct in your comments and try not to be repetitive with others. And let's just try to hold to that 3-minute kind of timeline. And then we'll try to get through this and hopefully, a decent time frame. So Elizabeth, how are you?
I'm good, Rob. How are you doing?
Very good.
All right, good. Well, thank you very much. We'll try to be brief. It is a relatively small application. I always hate to say that because you never know, but Let's walk through it and you can see exactly what we're up to. So as Rob mentioned, this is Isaac Newton Square, which was approved and rezoned to the PRM district in 2019. And as you all probably know, if we go to the next slide, that Isaac Newton Square is located on the west side of Wheelie Avenue, north of the W&OD Trail. It originally was zoned with 34 acres, but what we're talking about tonight involves 15 acres on the northern portion of the development. We've got that area outlined in red, although that seems big because really what we're asking for is just related to the road network itself. There is no proposal for new buildings with this FDP. It's purely to allow infrastructure, the road network to be built that would set the stage for the future blocks of buildings. With me also tonight is Fred Rothmeyer with MRP on behalf of the applicant, Bernie Suchisiegel with our office. We also have Pete Crawford, the civil engineer from Urban, and our arborist, Kevin Tankersley, who's also with Urban. So if they need to jump in, they can. Go to the next slide, please. Uh-oh, we're having a little technical difficulty here. Okay, here we go. In the upper left corner, you can kind of see the overall plan for Isaac Newton Square. This is the CDP plan that you can see in the upper left-hand corner. And the rest of the black and white diagram here is the northern section of that. You can have Wheelie Avenue is off to the right-hand side of the screen. Isaac Newton Square North, an existing road area, comes in from Wheelie Avenue and goes towards the west. And in this CDP, there are certain spur roads as well. We have Isaac Newton Square East, which goes between blocks N2 and N3. We have Center Street, which goes between block N1 and N2. And we have Isaac Newton Square West, which is between block W2 and W2A. So you can see that these are the building blocks of the future, but what we're going to talk about is just the road. So if you go to the next slide. So here's really what the FDP looks like. So take away the blocks and you have this kind of framework of streets. And what we're proposing to construct here is the reconstruction of Isaac Newton North, also Isaac Newton West, and then two new spur streets, Center Street, as I mentioned before, and also Isaac Newton Square East. In addition to this, we're making improvements to Wheelie Avenue. Wheelie Avenue from the northern property line to Isaac Square North. And what's happening there is the construction of a multi-use trail that's 10 feet wide and additional landscaping between the trail and Wheelie Avenue. So these are all 2-lane roads, and generally they have parking on one, sometimes on both sides of the street. They measure typically 24 feet for the travel lanes and another 8 feet for the parking lane for about 32 feet in width. This is consistent with what is shown on the approved conceptual development plan. Next slide. This is a little colorful graphic showing you the difference between what is shown as a permanent condition and then the pinky purple, which is an interim condition. So there will be no office buildings on the north side of this, but there will be office buildings that remain on the south side for some period of time until redevelopment happens there. So this pink is an interim sidewalk and interim streetscapes. I mean, not streetscape, I'm sorry, interim street lights, so that there will be good pedestrian connectivity down the street to these parking fields and to the office buildings themselves. What you see in green is the roadbed itself, and then you'll see a series of bioretention tree pits. Bertie, I don't know if you can point those out where they are. So those will be in their permanent condition, and also Wheelie Avenue improvements will be in their permanent ultimate condition. Next, please. I just wanted to give you this graphic that shows the existing conditions in green. And then there is a blue condition, which is the approved FDP, and the red, which is the approved CDP. Sorry, the FDP is pending. Sorry about that. Jumping the gun there. And what you actually see is a little bit of green and a little bit of purple, because the FDP is consistent with the CDP as far as the alignment of these roads. We have really held it very, exactly to what we showed in the CDP as far as the curbs, the widths, and the entrances into the future land base. Next slide. This is a excerpt from the approved CDP that shows tree preservation. I'm sure all of you are familiar with the willow oak trees that are really the focal point of Isaac Newton Square North. The retention of these willow oak trees is very important to the overall design, to the community and to the developer both. And so here you can see the shaded trees along Isaac Newton Square North and West, which are the willow oak trees that were shown to be preserved on the CDP. And if you go to the next slide, we have what we're showing on the FDP. The green trees are what are being preserved. And there's a few trees that are taken down. These trees were identified to be taken down for the most part because they're where new streets connect, and they can't exist without new street connection. On the approved CDP, we showed 27 trees to be preserved. This actually has 29 trees to be preserved on this plan. And if I could just point out 2 trees that are different than what was on the plan. Bernie, if you can point to the cherry tree on the north side of, okay, you can see that hand there. That little X there is not a willow oak tree, it's a cherry tree, and it sits down from the street in a concrete patio. And so that will be removed, because removing that concrete patio and everything else related to it will disturb that tree. That was shown to be preserved previously, but it is something that was an oversight in the thought that that concrete patio is just not going to allow that to remain. And it is a little bit out of character with the willow oaks that are really the dominant tree here that we're trying to really showcase. The other tree is on the left-hand side of the plan, tree 159. That tree was shown to be preserved, but the tree to the south of it, 158, was shown to be removed. So there's a swap going on there because of utilities and proposed entrance into that land bay. But overall, we're preserving more trees on the FDP than we showed on the CDP. And of course, tree preservation has been a key element to the previous approval. The Kevin, the arborist that's working on this, is in the middle of producing the tree preservation plan, which will be submitted with the site plan that follows this final development plan. And that will be in keeping with our proffers with regard to the analysis of the conditions of the trees, the way we're going to do demolition around the trees, what we're going to do to improve the survivability of the trees, and to ensure that these trees remain for the long term and really continue to be that beautiful arbor that they are. Next. Just wanted to kind of focus in a little bit on Wheelie Avenue. So it's a little hard to see because of the shading, but what we have here is we have a multi-use trail, which is going to be asphalt, and it is going to go along the edge of Wheelie Avenue, sitting 12 feet back from the face of curb. In between that 12 feet will be a series of trees and understory shrubbery, creating that Reston feel that's shown in the comprehensive plan and we're all familiar with. There is a utility being located underneath that trail to avoid having to interfere with the trees in the landscape amenity panel. And you can also see a tree kind of in the lower left-hand corner. That tree at one time was potentially in danger because of creating this trail, but we have scooted the trail over to the east. It avoids that critical root zone of that tree. It also, I will admit, avoids electrical utilities that are in that location, but it creates a good preservation of that tree as well. So that's what's happening along Wheelie, and we will be installing permanent light fixtures along that street. And next, I think we're getting to the end though, trying to be brief. This is just showing you a section. This is Isaac Newton Square North, and we're looking west. And so you can see the willow oak trees on the right side of this section. And then you can see the road bed with the 2 travel lanes, the parking lane, and then the interim street light and the interim sidewalk that we showed that had been in pink along that side to provide pedestrian access. When the building blocks come in on the Willow Oak side, there will be sidewalks and boardwalks and all the park elements included. So right now we're preserving the trees and we're building the road, and you will have additional information when each land bay comes in for their development to kind of fill out the rest of the streetscape. And the next slide. All right, I just wanted to let you know that the staff report was published. Alexis Robinson is the staff coordinator on this. We're pleased to say that there is a recommendation of approval for it. We're here today at your committee meeting. We appreciate you fitting us into your schedule, and we apologize that we were not here back in June or July. But I hope that we can answer all your questions tonight, and we are set for the Planning Commission this Wednesday. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, thank you, Elizabeth. That was a good presentation, and I do appreciate you adding the graphic overlaying the CDP and the FDP. I think in the future we're gonna always need to see that kind of comparison graphic, just to kind of keep tabs, because it's hard for us to all remember and know exactly how the line work shakes out. So I did fail to mention, so Elizabeth provided some updated links later in the day, and I think I sent that out in an email. Not only that, I think it included this graphic and some revisions that the county staff had asked for, and then also it also included a link to the staff report. I think the staff report was like 55 megabytes worth of data, so it was way too sizable to send around just in an email. So again, we got that just today. We did send that out in a link, and I'm not sure anybody had a chance to jump into that, but just wanted to bring that to your attention. So let me try to go around the room here to the committee members. I have a list here of everybody who's here. I just like to maybe call out a name, see if you have a comment, and just kind of move on in that regard, if that's okay. So let me start with David. David Bunnell.
Thanks, Rob. Elizabeth, could you go through give us a decent summary of what the staff reaction to this was? What kinds of things the staff asked you to modify or include or exclude? And what actions have you taken or will take on those issues?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. I will say, just cutting to the chase, that there are no outstanding issues in the staff report, that the staff felt like we had resolved everything that had been brought to our attention. But going back in time to talk about what we did talk about, I mentioned along Wheelie Avenue, there had been a discussion as to the location of the trail and how it could skirt around the utilities and the tree in order to preserve that. And there was also the discussion, and we did move the utility, I think it's a storm drain pipe, from what we had it crossing the trees somewhat into the location of the trail. So the utility is underneath the trail, and therefore it's much less impactful on any of the vegetation for the future survivability and ability to really thrive there. So those were changes that we did make for the staff. Other than that, I think most everything else really focused on the willow oak trees. because these trees are just the, you know, the premier thing about the whole site. Let's be clear about it. So they wanted to make sure that we were looking at every opportunity to relocate utilities and to make sure that those trees would survive. So we talked about the cherry tree that I mentioned. We also talked about tree number 159 versus 158. And one of the things that they talked about was curb ramps. So, you know, when you have AD accessible ramps right at an intersection, they need to be at a certain location. And will they interfere with the tree? Will they not interfere with the tree? So we have curb ramps on here that we could fit on there appropriately. And as we go through the FDPs for the adjacent land base, we may need to look again at where we can add AD accessible ramps. So they wanted us to be aware of that. And there is a development condition about that. So that is something else we're going to have to continue to look at for that balance between the trees and, you know, safety for pedestrians.
Okay, thank you very much. If I could, Rob, just one other question. I believe you talked about this before, but stormwater management with this staged development, you're going to have the road, of course, but then you're going to have sort of empty space up there for a while. How are you ultimately handling stormwater management on this northern site? And when are you going to do that?
Well, we are providing stormwater management now for the infrastructure itself. So the tree pits that we have are bioretention tree pits that are serving stormwater management, in addition to providing beautiful trees. So those are occurring along the streets that we have. We also have some underground vaults that are serving for volume control as well. And as each land bay comes in, we will be having to prove that we are meeting the stormwater requirements and the proffers on a block by block basis. If you have more questions about that, I'm gonna ask Pete Crawford to chime in, as I'm not gonna, you know, pretend to know all the nuances of a his stormwater management plan. So if you have another question, let me know.
I'm fine with that. Thank you very much. And thanks, Rob.
Sure. Sue, do you want to go ahead next?
Rob had some questions, but I've reviewed the developer's response to his questions in the email. And so I'm fine. I have no other questions.
All right. Thank you, Sue. I do want to remind everybody, I will monitor the chat. Some of you are letting me know you're not going to have any comments, and that's helpful. So I'll kind of continue to monitor that. And or if you don't have the ability to speak, you can always put something in the chat and I could speak for you. Hey, real quick, I did want to just, since Sue mentioned my comment, I did pass along the comment to the applicant earlier today. I was concerned that just the lack of emphasis of the tree preservation on this FDP, and I recognize it's not a site plan, but those willow trees are so important and so vital to this application. I just felt that there you know, maybe should have been just more attention to that. And the applicant did respond, and I do like the response. I'm still not crazy that there's that note on sheet C17 that seems to give a lot of flexibility about eliminating any tree preservation and tree save. So I'd love to see that note eliminated or removed entirely. But I understand that the goal of trying to create some flexibility, but that note was pretty broad, and I just think too broad for my liking on the FDP. So with that, let me jump in and go to, let's see, Rebecca.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for your presentation. So I also had a little concern about the distance between the sidewalk and the roadway, especially on the wheelie side, where you're going to have utility underneath that pathway, and then 12 feet, and then wheelie. So I'm a geotechnical engineer, and structurally, you're going to have compacted new fill And typically our recommendations are that you extend that new fill 5 feet from the limit of your sidewalk or paved area, which actually encroaches into that area of the landscape. And we've been seeing a lot of issues with landscape areas in Fairfax where the soils are just too compact because of the structural need when to place it, that even when they excavate it out and then try to place something in, there has been some difficulty for the trees to take root and survive in those areas. So that's my primary comment and concern in that region as well.
All right, thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Rebecca. Let me go on to Tammy.
Thank you. I am equally concerned with the trees. I just wanted to clarify, when you said this is the street layout only, I'm assuming that there are utilities under the streets as well as storm and sewer lines. Is that correct?
Right, this is an
So it's-
infrastructure, yeah, it's an infrastructure plan. It does include some utilities as well as the streets themselves. So we're not gonna have to tear up the streets later. We're doing it with this, what will be a public improvement plan, the site plan that will follow this, yes.
Okay, and how old are the willow oaks right now?
I don't know that I know how old they are. They range from like 30 to 40 inches in diameter. So they're some, you know, I think they were probably planted back in the 1980s, something along those lines. I
Okay.
think that's when the developments first started. This development was built in the 80s through 2001. So,
Okay, so my concern is with the street being immediately adjacent to those trees and the roots both communicating with their neighbor trees as well as going under the street. When you put the new street in approximately the same area and you're really digging here, we saw on your preliminary concept plan that you were making all kinds of protections for those roots. You were keeping the machinery away from them so that as Rebecca was commenting on the compaction of the soil, would not happen. I don't see how you have room to do that, given this, you know, tight location adjacent to the trees.
well, this is the same plan as the CDP with the proffers, the preliminary plan with and the proffers that are approved. And it does talk about being very careful with how the demolition goes for not only the streets themselves, but for the patio next door, for the buildings. And so we don't envision that next to these trees, we will be able to use heavy equipment. It will be a much more low impact by hand in some cases, taking up of the street. So that is all part of the tree preservation plan that has to be approved by the urban forester in the next, before we can do any land development at all. He has to pass judgment and say that our methods for preserving the trees are adequate. And there will be probably root pruning and other things that the arborists will propose and the UFMD will agree are the best ways to ensure the longevity of the trees.
Yep, this is Frederick Rothmeyer. So as I understand, and we looked at this really in depth when we went through the CDP and worked with the arborist of Fairfax County to come up with the plan. But the root zone does not go under the current streets. So that's, since there is no water coming through the street, there would be no significant root growth under it. And as you can see, as Isaac Newton Square North goes to the west, we're pulling the street away from the trees. And that was because the current curb and the current roads are closer there to the existing trees. than where we're not pulling it away. So as Elizabeth said, we're not going to put heavy machinery in the Willow Oak zone. We will be working from the current roadbed and away from the Willow Oaks. So, we will have further detail, but we're not going to put big backhoes into these, into the, outside of the roadbed. As you are concerned and want to preserve these Willow Oaks, so do we. This is an asset for the property. We're fully focused and committed to do everything that is good for these trees to maintain it.
I'm hearing what you're saying, but I've been on a construction site or two, and there's no way in hell you're laying sewer pipe by hand and not having backhoes in there and heavy equipment. And that's what I don't understand.
So the root zone is not under the road. That's not where the roots are, because it doesn't have water infiltration.
I understand that theory, but when we were doing the environmental plan with the same forester that you're talking about, the Fairfax County, we learned that the drip line is not the end of the roots. And yes, there's more roots on the other side. And yes, there's not a lot of moisture under the road, but I am very concerned if you lose these trees, what is plan B? Because we're trying to have every possible mature tree in Reston preserved that we can. And Isaac Newton came in and we were thrilled that this was going to be a neighborhood of park-like development with these mature trees. You've already are challenged with your plan, your conceptual plan of having huge high rises to the south that's going to shade these existing trees on the east-west private road. So which are the majority of trees that we're talking about in your FDP plan here. What is plan B if the trees fail?
If the trees fail, I would think we replant a tree, but I don't see that, putting the utility below the road, and we'll go further in depth in the plan, Tammy, and make sure that, we take utmost care. But, trees
Are
do
you
die,
planning to
and
have
we
when
don't
you're
think that
finished
anything will be wiped out. So
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No.
In the plan, are you planning to have, you showed, Elizabeth showed the slide with the temporary sidewalk on the south side of the street. Are you planning to have a sidewalk when you're all done, or a boardwalk on the north side of this?
Correct. And
North?
yes, and it's as close to the planned buildings as possible. And that is per the CDP. And those boardwalks we would have on sleepers, as we discussed with the CDP as well. So, but yes, it's pulled away from the trees. I don't know if there's an exhibit going back to in here for the CDP.
Not in here, but we're going to look real quick from the CDP for some of the images, because Tammy, you're right. That area is planned as a park-like setting, and it is designed as very sensitive to the trees, and it has boardwalks and the like in order not to impact that side of the critical root zone. So Bernie's looking for it now. Maybe we'll find it and be able to show you, but there
This is where the
commitments to that in the proffers, and we're fully intending to make plan A succeed.
Thank you. I think everybody on this committee is nervous about this. Very, very concerned. So thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Vishali.
Thanks, Rob. I don't have any questions. I had one question with regards to stormwater, which was already asked and answered. And then my other question, I think, was the same question as Katie McLean. That's been answered as well. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Penniman.
Hi. A couple of questions. One, you talk about the interim lighting you're going to install, and I wanted to get a sense of what's the interim lighting versus the long-term plan for lighting, and just what are the characteristics of it in terms of type of lighting.
Okay, we also have an image of that, but while we've got this up, let me just go back for a minute to show you an image from the CDP of this oak walk, for a better name for it, where you can see how far back the boardwalk is set from the trees in order to maintain that. So I just wanted to give you this is the image that we're all committed to creating, is this park-like setting, this promenade along these mature trees that will continue to grow and survive for many years. So I just wanted to show that to you. We have an interim street light. Bernie, can you find that one? Okay, we're working on that. We're putting the street lights along Wheelie in permanently now, and that was a fixture that the county staff asked us to use. And then on the interim, these are pedestrian type lightings. When we go to the final development plan for the first development, that's going to set the stage for the materials and the street furnishings and the light fixtures that will be used to be consistent throughout the development. They may be different than what's on Wheelie, but they will be consistent throughout. So that is yet to be chosen, but the interim, finding it here, we do have an image of it in it. So sorry, we're not as fast on the imagery as we would like to be.
No, that's okay. On Wheelie, is there a conformity to other lighting in the area? I mean, if you worked it out with staff, I assume that's the case, but can you answer anything on that?
We asked them what they would prefer as their street light there. And of course, they provided a particular fixture and we included it in there. I don't know that they've used it elsewhere or not. Certainly a question that I can ask them, but I don't know if they have had other applicants use the same light fixture.
Okay. In terms of the stormwater management, if I recall correctly from the paperwork you submitted, you proffered to retain 25% of a one-year storm on site. Is that correct? Because what I'm interested in is you also are showing tables in here on 2 and 10-year storm retention. And I wanted to get some sense of what percentage is retained on site with the vaults and everything else in the 2 and 10-year as well as the 1 year.
Pete, are you available to answer that question?
I am here.
Thank you.
I don't have the percentages off the top of my head. What I can say is and confirm is that the 1, 2, and 10-year storms are all being treated. What's being done is the site today is currently impervious. And what we're doing is we're releasing the water as if it was a good forested condition. So essentially we're bringing it back to a forested condition, which is essentially the most retention that you can do on a property. So there's no detention out there today. And again, we're adding detention to essentially reverse the impervious area and have it act like it was good forested. Does that answer your question? Because I don't, the percentage question, I'm not quite sure how to answer that. The percentage, are you asking like of the site area, what is the percentage of the area that's being treated? Or is it?
I think in the existing comp plan, there's a requirement for developments that involve existing impervious surfaces of more than 50%, that there has to be a 40% reduction in the runoff as part of that. Now you're saying you're returning it to good forested conditions, so that may be more than a 25 or 40% reduction. but I don't know. And that's why I was using a percentage term, but can you relate those concepts?
Yes, and I'm gonna look up the percentage. The comp plan has a 20% reduction goal.
The proffer says that you're going to reduce the volume of runoff to the 2-year 24-hour storm by 25% from the pre-development runoff amount.
Well, that's right. Or there's alternate methods, which is essentially what the county recognizes as the energy balance method, which means if you can't reduce the actual volume of runoff, you over detain the rate of runoff in order to make up for the increase in volume. So it's essentially energy balance is the theory behind it is that the volume of water times the rate of water in the precondition should be the same as in the post condition. So if you increase the volume of runoff, you have to reduce the rate even further to make up for that volume. So that's the alternate way of meeting that requirement, which we are meeting with this plan.
And how does that relate to good forested conditions?
The layman's way of answering it is we're not adding any hard surfaces, impervious surfaces we're taking away, correct, Pete?
Yes, on an interim basis.
And then all the
this
tree
site
wells are basically, storm filters.
Well, yes, that's part of the answer. And so what in the interim condition, because we're removing buildings, we're actually decreasing the amount of impervious area. However, all the computations and the sizing of the facility are in anticipation of those areas that we're removing being infilled with future development. So that's really a temporary condition where we're reducing the impervious area. The bottom line, though, is that the ultimate condition of the roads is being designed in order to meet the proper commitments.
But how does that relate, since the proper commitment related to a 2-year storm, you also have data on the 10-year storm and the 1-year storm, and I was just wondering how they relate to that.
Sure. So the comprehensive plan goals relate to the 2-year storm. The 1 and 10-year storm are Fairfax County code requirements. And so the comprehensive plan doesn't speak to the 1 and the 10. However, in order to meet county requirements, we have to compute for the 1, 2, and the 10. And it just happens that the 2-year storm is what's spoken to in the comprehensive plan. So it's a different rate of runoff for the storm, the 1 year being a more frequent storm, a 2-year being slightly less, and it's the chance of that storm happening within a 100-year span. So just to sort of reiterate the answer, the comp plan chose to have a more stringent requirement for the 2-year storm. Fairfax County requirements require you to requirements for the 1 year, the 2-year, and the 10-year. So we have computations for all 3 of those storm events on the plan.
And
the 2-year storm event is just.
Is that on site or does that include the detention ponds? I mean, just dumping it off site.
There is no off-site facility that this site is dependent on. All the facilities that we're using to treat this site are on-site proposed facilities.
Okay.
So there's underground detention vaults that will reduce the rate of runoff. And then there are the bioretention tree pits, as well as manufactured filtering devices that will treat the runoff.
And those are all things you're adding in this phase?
That's right.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, one other question, just as to give us a sense, if you have a vague sense at least. This is an interim movement to lay the groundwork for upcoming development of new buildings, which in this area, I guess, are all residential buildings. Do you have any ballpark sense of when that may start?
We don't know for sure. We're hopeful that we'll be having an FDP on 1 or more blocks on the north side of Isaac Newton Square North in the next 6 months, but can't promise. Okay, that's our best guess right now. Yeah.
Just a guess.
Looking at the the plan we have in front of you, Bernie, if you can scoot it down a little bit, the fixture on the upper left is the trail. Uh-oh, what happened? Something happened. Sorry. Here goes. It says it's scooting. The one on the upper left we're going to see is the one that goes along Wheelie Avenue, and the one in the center on the top of this that we're going to get to is the temporary one that we're looking at. It's going to be, of course, based on the photometrics. We're showing 3 of them along Wheelie Avenue, but we will have to do a photometric plan with the PI plan to do it. Okay, that's good. So the one on the upper left is, as I said, the multi-purpose one, trail, and this one, which is a little different, not as round, a little bit more oblong, is the temporary street lighting for the south side of Isaac Newton Square North.
And do you know that the color temperature that you're going to be using, is it LED for one thing, and do you know the color temperature?
I'm going to punt that one to Pete if he knows the answer, because I do not know the color temperature.
I don't know that
'Cause
either, Elizabeth.
Okay.
If you could look into it and consider the impact on birds and wildlife, bats, birds and wildlife, because that's what color temperature is relevant to. Insects as well.
All right.
If you're
Good
okay,
to know. Will do.
we'll keep things going here, Bill. Is it okay?
I'm done.
All right, let's go. Since we were on stormwater, why don't we go to the other William P. Mr. William Pegas.
Hey, actually, there can probably be a pretty quick response related to the color temperature of the lights, because there was a lighting fixture study that actually picked those related to Reston Board of Directors. And the paper actually went through the other committee that I'm on, the Environmental Advisory Committee. So that's probably out there as to what it is, but whatever temperature, because the state, I think, is providing some relation of, well, no, it's the power company is providing them as some kind of a discount. And there was some discussion about the color temperature, and that was approved in an actual paper that's available through Reston Association. Anyway, the other thing that I wanted to mention was that regarding the rainfall and stormwater retention systems, of course, county requirements are essentially the minimum, not necessarily the best practice, but they're the minimum. And regarding stormwater, besides just what's being done at the streets and in the infrastructure, vegetative roofing can provide a tremendous amount of control for stormwater. And you can put vegetated roofs on any kind of structure, including wood frame with a wood deck. And it works just fine and can, really help retain a lot more water, long-term or temporary flow. The other thing is that Reston has come out very strongly in native vegetation of all kinds. So any of the new vegetation that goes in, it's not only just native to Virginia, but native to Fairfax County. And that's also a document that's very close to being approved by the Board of Directors for Reston. And then let's see. So what we'd really like to see is that not cultivars or varieties, but true native plants of all kinds on the project. The other thing is that, and this is a comment as opposed to a condition of the building, but for years, and I mean for years, if you go and look at your page C10 of 21, I can show you that where it has the little asterisk and it says existing outfall number 1 on your property is a very large dump. And it has been there for many, many years. And the problem is that I had pointed this out to Reston, but Reston can't do anything about it because it's all on your property, not on Reston land. So maybe in the interim, as you move forward with things, you can see about having the dump removed, because it's like mattresses, dishwashers, stoves, all kind of interesting variety of things. Whatever anybody could roll down that hill. And it's really on the side of the hill. It's not at the bottom. If it was at the bottom, it would have rolled onto Reston land and they would be able to remove it, but they can't. So it's all on the side of that hill down there. And basically, that's it.
All right, thank you, William.
Thank you.
Michelle Kimmel.
None for me tonight. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Michelle. I did get a little chat from Katie, kind of piggybacking Tammy's comments about the trees and the concern about the closeness of the trees to the existing road. Katie was asking, do we know what the dimension is from those kind of the tree center to the edge of the existing road? And I think where that's going is, I mean, Fred, I heard your explanation about the roots are probably growing more, away from the road and not, but there are some proposed utilities in the road close to the trees. Is there a way to just move those utilities further away from those existing trees, just to avoid that potential of some of the root system being under the road? I think that's just again, an ongoing comment here from various people.
I don't know, Pete, if you have a thought on the utility locations under the road in relationship to the trees.
Yeah, I mean, the way we've done it is we've located the water line, which is the shallowest utility on the northern side of the road, and the sewer, which is deeper. That's the furthest utility from the trees. With the new development, new infrastructure is needed because it's currently an office complex and we're adding residential. So I am not sure that we can, in fact, we can't avoid putting new utilities because new sizes of utilities are needed in the infrastructure. And we have located them, at least in my opinion, in the correct manner as far as shallowest utility closest to the tree, deepest utility furthest from the tree, in order to minimize the depth of trenching near the trees.
Okay, let's go on to Shelley.
Okay, hi. A lot of my concerns have already been voiced. I do want to say just one thing. All the tree preservation areas that are at the northern end of the property, I wonder if you've really taken a good look at some of those trees. Many of them are in need of removal of the vines that are creeping up them that could damage their longevity. And I would hope that when you say tree preservation, you don't just mean leave them alone, but to actually really try to preserve that forest boundary between your property and the golf course. So that's all I'm going to add tonight.
Well, thank you. We do have a proffer that calls for an invasive species management, where we would go into these forested areas and remove the invasive species. We agree with you. It's vital to do that, to preserve those areas.
Okay, good. That's great to hear. Thank you, Elizabeth.
All right, Richard Kennedy, do you have any comments this evening?
No, I'm going to pass, Rob. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Richard. I know Jake's listening in, but he had no comment. And then John, I don't know if you're back with us yet. John was having technical difficulty, he says, and can't see that he's back on. Yeah, it doesn't look like it. All right. Commissioner Carter, I know you were on the line earlier. Would you like to say a few words?
Yes, I would. You know, Elizabeth, I think it's confusing. Number one is the extent of this. I guess I had a different impression of what we were doing, and I've been to a couple of these applications. But to start off, why are we doing this as opposed to doing it as part of the site plan?
What we're doing is we're trying to establish the road pattern at one fell swoop, to build it all at one fell swoop, so that it's set up for the building blocks for N1, N2, N3, that FDP, of course, will follow for each of those blocks. And then the developer can go in there and the road is already established. It's already set up for aiding the construction on the adjacent blocks.
Is that because it goes across several properties and several developers, so you want to have
Well, it goes
that-
across several particular building
Yeah.
blocks, so to speak. I mean, it's not uncommon to do this in large developments, to have a public improvement plan, the first thing that goes through.
I guess what I had understood is this was only curb to curb. That was the extent of this. And we've had a lot of discussion about new trees, about lighting that probably isn't applicable to this. So I think you need a drawing that spells out clearly what is the extent of this. And if you could pull up any of the drawings, I guess, because it's very confusing, I think, of what it is that we're actually dealing with. And to the extent that you go beyond the curbs, I think we have a problem with what's going on. So just any of those drawings, I think.
Okay, we're getting one here.
That one with the two colors, it had, I think, green and red.
The green and the pink one from the PowerPoint presentation, I think is probably the best one. And it's hard to see because it's such a big area and it's such a little screen, and it's a little difficult. But as we look at this, I don't know if you can make it bigger with the slide thing.
Well, there's another one too. So what, I didn't realize that pink. I thought you were just going to the curb. Now, to the extent that you get over into the sidewalks, I think we don't want to commit to that.
Well, the only place that we are doing sidewalks is we're doing the ultimate trail along Wheelie.
Yes.
Because it's just a good thing to get that established and get that going. And we're doing an interim sidewalk along the south side, because as we need to provide pedestrian access to these existing blocks on the south. So these buildings are still there. People are using the parking lots. You know, they might want to take a walk at lunch, all those kinds of things we want to make sure, and staff in particularly wants to make sure that the interim conditions will be something that is useful to people and attractive to people. Because to be honest, we are planning to build on the north side of this. That's the first building blocks are going to be what you see here and a little to the west. So what's going to stay on the south may be there for 5 years. It may be there for 7 years. We don't know. So we want to make sure that we have pedestrian access. That's
in my terms, the green and the pink or red, whatever color that is the actual extent of this. And anything in the pink is interim, and the final will actually come back as part of the site plans for those buildings on the south. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
I think that was clear. Maybe other people realize that, but I don't think that was clear. But definitely when you get to the presentation. Now I do have some issues. So number one, the wheelie. I think that bikeway, that's that hasn't been on there before. I like that better. I don't like the trail and why we're doing an on-site trail in addition to an off-site trail. Are we actually moving the curb on Wheelie? Maybe that's too technical, but without.
We are doing it. It's a couple of feet.
Moving the curb.
Just to create the bike lane.
There will be an on-road bike lane and there will be a multi-purpose trail. There's both facilities planned.
Why? Why are we doing that? Because you cannot get to the on-street. You have to go across the grass and jump the curb to get to that. Why would we do that? and move the curb.
We
It's
did
part
it
of the,
because
it's
we
part
were
of the
asked to do
comprehensive
it,
plan.
John.
Yeah, it's part of the comprehensive plan to have this multi-purpose trail.
It's not that specific.
Well,
I don't see
the bicycle plan for the county shows on-road bike lanes. So we have to provide the on-road bike
moving
lanes.
away from on-street bikeways in general, but
And then the multi-purpose thing is designed all along the west side of Wheelie that goes all the way towards the metro station. It's supposed to be a continuous, and it takes different forms. If you look at the comp plan, closer it gets to metro, the more urban it seems, and the further away it gets a little bit, looser and more suburban in a sense. But that's what it's about. Both of those are comp plan elements that we were asked at the rezoning stage to accommodate.
Oops.
Rob, if I could interject here, John, my recollection is that when we talked about the pathways that needed to be enhanced or built during this new comp plan, that the idea was along the major streets, we should have separated bike paths and walking paths. And I think that's what Wheelie was a specific example of that when we went through that.
I mean, David, I think you bring up a good point. There's, I don't think the current comp plan and the current bike path plan has caught up to some of the more potential modern day thinking. Without seeing a more comprehensive view of the whole area and what the latest, thought is for this corridor, and having, co-chaired the Wheelie Avenue pedestrian crossing right up the street, there's even yet another study that's going to be conducted by the county to figure out what is the best thing to happen along Wheelie Avenue from a pedestrian, bike, multimodal, point of view.
I think that just goes to Sunset, though. I don't know that it would go this far up.
I know the study was supposed to at least go to the WNOD trail.
That's correct.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, John, we can.
Mm-hmm.
John, are you still with us? Do you have any further comments?
Hey, Rob, while you're waiting for John Carter, can you hear me? This is John Coppola.
Yeah, John, I got you.
Do you want me to just go real quick while we're waiting for him to reconnect?
Sure.
Okay. If he jumps back on, I'll stop. I totally agree with all the comments we've heard so far, and what I was going to suggest on the Willow Oaks is that perhaps we get a cross section showing the trees, the road, the utilities, how deep they are, their area of influence when you're digging, and so we can really understand that. And I think you said it, Rob, really showing a really defined tree protection and how we're going to save those trees, because as we all know, once you kill them, that's it, right? Their plan B is not a good one, as Tammy talked about. And I saw that there were some electric lines and lights on the north side. How you do that is going to be essential, because if you just run those lines right along the route boundaries, that in and of itself will take out the trees. Two other separate comments, one regarding the detention and stormwater. I do know that Hidden Creek is working with the county on dealing with the flooding issues in that area, which we all know there's quite a few. I think dumping the water just onto the golf course and that whole system without really coordinating that with Hidden Creek and the county is missing a very important point here. And so I think that's key. How do we incorporate this stormwater into that system correctly without adding to the problems we already have? Lastly, I also understand there's sanitary capacity issues in that area. especially given all the additional density. And so I'm sure the urban is already looking at that, but just wanted to point that out.
All right, thank you, John. So, Mr. Carter.
Yes, I'm back. I need three proffers just to make this a little more clearer. Number one, maybe people don't realize, but the Planning Commission has approved these on motions unanimously, as well as the Board of Supervisors. And they want these streets designed differently than we're getting now. And this one is almost there. I'm not sure what we do about this one. Maybe it'll go, but the streets are too wide. We've got streets designed for beltway traffic. 12-foot lanes are not acceptable in this area. We should not be widening streets as much as we're doing here. Crosswalks need to be shown, and you don't have all the crosswalks there. We have some subdivision requirements. So some of these the turning radii are too big. And if we're going to have the Silver Line work, we've got to have this addressed. Maybe this one, since there's a lot of interim conditions here, maybe this one can skate through, but we need to take these more seriously, mostly on the part of staff. The Board of Supervisors has asked for changes and we're not getting them. An example would be the streetlights. That's nice that the staff is picking streetlights, but my understanding is the Board of Supervisors needs to be involved in that. We should not be picking streetlights ahead of time like this. And we've been asking for a streetlight program for Reston, and we still don't have it. This just is not going to work like this. But again, some of this can go. I need three proffers. One is the proffer for the utilities, so we keep them away from that north side along the curb. Number two, we need a proffer, preferably put it on the drawings. You're missing crosswalks where they should be. I don't think you show them on Wheelie, but on the first street, the north-south street, there's a lack of a crosswalk there. So I need something about this. And the third one we need, and this is new, is a proffer for the subdivision regulations so that this street can be subdivided separately from all the other parcels so that it's under control of an overall association that would control the maintenance and the pedestrian access to that. So that third one, we definitely need that. Do you understand that, Elizabeth, and why we need that?
I think I do.
This problem in Reston with these private streets where they're owned by one street is owned by multiple people, and they don't agree on the maintenance or the access to it. So what we need is an overall subdivision is the only way I think we could control this. One subdivision that controls the whole street separate from the adjacent property owners. And then there would be some kind of an association set up that would deal with the maintenance and the pedestrian, the access to it. Which kind of pedestrian, what kinds of things can you do in it?
John,
Right.
we
Right.
are doing that.
Yeah.
So we are doing that. That's how we're setting it up. So.
Okay, that's good. I just like it to have it in a proffer.
Yep.
So the subdivision, that utility proffer, and I don't know what you want to do with the crosswalks. Preferably you just show them, but some of that we can deal with later. Another on the editorial side, I do not like those bioretention tree pits. Maybe on the north-south streets they could be used, but on the main street, those would be death to the willow oaks. Those are dangerous and they should not be used in high volume pedestrian areas because people actually fall into them and get hurt. And so they should not be used. I know we're dealing with Fairfax County staff likes them. I don't, and I do not intend on moving approval for any project that has those tree pits in high pedestrian volumes. They might be good in the neighborhood areas, They might be good where you have low pedestrian volumes, but they should not be used in an area like this east-west straight. So what can you do about that by Wednesday? Can you have the proffer for the subdivision?
Let me just point out a few things. Number one, this is a final development plan amendment.
Yes.
So it does not have proffers that are new proffers. It has development conditions.
As
So
conditions.
I can certainly work with Alexis Robinson on certain things. I will point out that is a proffer currently, it's number 7 in the approved proffers that talks about the owners association, the declarations, and how the roads will be maintained by the overall association. So I'm sure it's the intention to create a subdivision of the road itself. It's done regular. I don't know why. I'm not sure why the regulations now are stopping that, because I know it's happened on several occasions. So I can certainly work with Pete and come up with that if needed to clarify it in a development condition. With regard to the crosswalks, I think we're all pro crosswalks. Right now, there aren't any sidewalks on the north side of Isaac Newton Square in this development plan. So to put a crosswalk, it's not leading anywhere right now, but we can certainly, where there are sidewalks, provide the crosswalks, and that can be done by a development condition. I'm sure can be easily accomplished. So we got subdivision, we got crosswalks, and we got utilities. So the utilities, I do not see those in the proffers, so we could probably work up a development condition with that could satisfy your concern there.
And I don't see why the water needs to be on that north side. Water is often in the street, which they would be in this case, I guess.
Yes, they are under the street, yes.
So I would move those over and get away from those trees. My last question on the trees, and then this is could you pull up one of those drawings that has that on it? Why are you moving the curb on the west side of this? The west portion of this street moves the curb, which I think puts those trees, to the extent that they're over there, in jeopardy.
We're pulling them away from them, John.
Yeah.
They're on the north side there, so we're pulling the curb away from the willow oaks.
So they're actually getting a little bit up in that, where that corner makes a hard turn there. That is where the road is moving away from the willow oaks. So that's where Fred was telling you, they're a little bit closer in that location than to the east. And so we have tried to pull the curb away to give them a little bit more room for the future.
So maybe it makes some sense to do it that way. I was listening to Tammy and others talking about keeping construction away from those trees, and that looked problematic to me when you're moving curbs and things, but maybe you can do that in a delicate way. That it's, I guess, a compromise between the existing curbs being too close and trying to preserve them by moving the curb farther away. Maybe that'll work. Okay. I still don't like the street width. I really don't like 12-foot lanes in pedestrian oriented places. Maybe that's a issue with staff. It's not too bad, but we really.
I mean, it's 12 feet. It's 12 feet, including the gutter pan. So,
I know.
You have a gutter pan, then 10 feet of asphalt, center line, 10 feet of asphalt, gutter pan. So,
I know.
Yeah.
But, there've been presentations to the Board of Supervisors, particularly by Rachel Flinton, saying we shouldn't have anything bigger than 10.5-foot lanes. And I think we ought to be minimizing paving for a couple of reasons. One, there's an environmental reason, but there's just a pedestrian oriented reason. We have a terrible street plan in Fairfax, particularly on the private streets. We don't have one street in Reston, one new street that supports pedestrians getting across it. And you can't get to the metro station easily. This is a tremendous problem with the Silver Line. And the Planning Commission has recognized this, and the Board of Supervisors has recognized this. I'm not sure the staff has or has not picked up on this issue, and we have got to get changes to this. Maybe this one is okay for now, since I think it's the first one that's coming to the commission since those follow-on motions have occurred. But you know, this is just a tremendous issue. If you can't get to the silver line, we've wasted a lot of time doing comprehensive plans and increasing density and spending hundreds of $1 million on a transportation system that you can't get to as a pedestrian. So as this one moves forward, be mindful of this. I hope this is going to work. I'm not sure I understood the stormwater management. I'm not sure I got what you said, but I'm not sure what you're doing. I don't know where the vaults are. I don't think you have any vaults yet. And you already heard my story about the bioretention tree pits. I guess those would have to be on those vertical streets, the north-south streets.
Correct.
So in the presentation to the Planning Commission, one of the first drawings I think you should have is just the extent of this. What is it that we're talking about? And I guess I've got one more thing on my notes. The tree, could you pull up that tree plan? I can't believe it seems not accurate, but can you pull that up?
Yes, we can. Just give us a moment here.
Yes, you really have which one of those are the willow oaks?
All of the ones that are green are willow oak trees. So they're along the north side of Isaac Newton Square North and along the west side of this is a long thing, INS West. Oh, all of those are willow oak trees with the exception of that one little tree that was a cherry tree. That's right there.
Let's look at the first block closest to Wheelie. Now you've got 1, 2, 3, 4,
5. There are 5 willow oak trees to be preserved there. Yes.
Are you sure there are 5 trees there?
Yes. It does seem like there's a lot of trees there. That's one of the reasons it's so lush and beautiful. There are 5 trees in that first block, and then you can see there's where we're taking out a tree for the road to be constructed to the north. Then we go through, and I think there may be, another 8 trees there. Trying to count them. 1, 2, 3. Take the glasses off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Well, I'm over there every day. I'll count them. We'll see.
Yes.
But see, you got they're larger and smaller, and I don't know. It seems odd, but okay, you say so.
Right.
All right, that's enough. But again, we want something on the utilities and something on the subdivision for this to strengthen this. And can you show on this where the vaults are for stormwater management? I didn't see it.
There is a vault. I'm not.
Oh, I see, up there on the north-south street.
Yeah, so John, this is Pete Crawford just jumping in here. There's a vault on each of the northern stub streets on the north. And then there's also a vault on Isaac Newton Square West, again, away from, on the opposite side from the Willow Oaks.
Okay.
In the lower left.
Now I see it. Now I see it. Okay. Well, that would be a better description of the stormwater management is actually locate when it comes to Wednesday and the planning.
And we can color code those better and show it more distinctly.
Yeah, the key point is that you're not just using the existing stormwater management, which was built 50 years ago, perhaps. You're actually augmenting what's there. That's the key thing to be saying next Wednesday, just to give you a hint. Okay.
Hint taken. Okay. Thank you.
All right. That's enough of me, but I do think these street standards are a problem that we keep using and we keep failing. And I think staff assumption that staff gets to pick those streetlights. I don't think that's the case. I think that's up to the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. So be careful of that. It's a little more difficult on the public streets because you've got other people involved. You've got utilities and you've got state highway in addition to Fairfax County. But I hope you can do something special on the private streets. And I like the section that you've shown and a hint at the kind of fixture that you would use. I hope we can come up with something like that. Maybe the first application that comes in for a building where you're actually doing the streetscape, we can put all this together in a very convincing way. Really important something to do. Otherwise, you can't get to Metro as a pedestrian.
Well, believe me, this development wants to get to Metro.
I would have, so.
Yep, so.
I would have thought a lot of other ones do too, but okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. So we've had a lot of comments tonight. The applicant is going before the Planning Commission on Wednesday. So we need to decide where we're going from here. It would take a motion from someone to act on this application tonight. I will just first of all say I'm recusing myself from voting, just so I get that clear. But I guess any final comments or does anyone have a motion to put forth?
Rob, this is Dave Vanel. I move that we recommend approval of the FDP as presented with the amendments or with the conditions, the suggestions that we talked about throughout the presentation.
Do I hear a second? All right, I'm not hearing a second.
Well, don't we need to specify what those conditions are? I mean, they're kind of out there up in the air, right? I mean, do we need to enumerate them? Just a question.
A very good question, Shelley.
I would suggest if it's permitted, 1 for the utilities and 2 for the subdivision. There may be others, but.
I think Rob also suggested that the flexibility on tree removal line be removed. I think that would also be likely very important to all of us.
So for me personally, I think this sets the stage for the rest of the development. And I really think we need to understand in a lot more detail how we're going to save the Willow Oaks and how we're going to deal with a lot of these issues, because from past experience, I know that they'll be pointing to this approval in the next approvals. And so I think it's better to take the time to get this right now than trying to rush this through. Just my opinion.
This is Tammy, and I 100% second John. This is not ready for prime time. If you've been around a construction site, there's no way that those tree roots are going to be handled so those trees can survive. And that this whole beautiful concept depends on that survival. We need, as John Capella said, we need to see the cross section of the utilities, all of them. And we need to see exactly where those trees are and where the street is in relation to them. And we need to see what exactly is going in. And we were promised this on the conceptual, as far as boardwalks, when the actual structures to the north are built. We are going from an office park to a huge, dense residential development right near the metro. And this has to be done correctly. So I will not be voting for this or seconding anything until we get that information. Thank you.
Rob, this is Bill. The one other thing I would add is simply, I think John Carter's point about narrowing the roads are a good one. And if that can be revisited with the staff, which may be the problem, that would be desirable. I mean, I'm certainly in favor of their being able to get started with doing the framework around which the other the blocks will be developed. That makes sense. But it does seem like there may need to be some tweaking before it's before the lines are drawn. And if you narrow the streets, you might also be able to create a little more space for the willow hooks.
There you go.
All right, so we still do not have a second to the motion. So that means we're not really able to vote on anything. So I guess I would say that motion dies of lack of a second.
Well, you
Any
could,
other motions?
just to move it along, you could vote for deferral. You could do that or not vote at all. I guess you could. Seems like you ought to do something.
I would just note, I know I've had my time already, I would just note that the Board of Supervisors approved the proffers and the conceptual development plan that called for the tree preservation plan to be provided at the time of the PI plan, of the site plan. It wasn't really identified as something that had to be accomplished at the FDP stage. It's very common for intensive tree preservation plans to occur at the time of site plan when all the final engineering is able to be understood so that it can be best, whether it's horizontal boring or whatever it is to save the trees. So I would offer that up as a suggestion. With regard to narrowing the streets, I'm not necessarily against narrowing streets, but again, the plan was approved by the Board of Supervisors with a certain road network, and we are matching that road network with this FDP. So we are in conformance with the CDP, and we're
streets, which are wide.
I'm sorry, what? So I just wanted to make those points of, FDPs are to be in conformance with the conceptual development plan and the proffers. And we're happy to add conditions with regard to crosswalks and things that are important, but just wanted to reiterate that we are in keeping with what was previously approved.
I think the one thing, though, I think you correctly chose to link the trees to the building of the roads because they're so intimately related in practice. So I don't want to fault you for doing that, but it makes sense to keep them linked, does it not?
Yes, and the public improvement plan for the roads requires the tree preservation plan to be implemented and reviewed and implemented and those good things so that no land disturbance can occur until that's all in place.
Yeah.
Rob,
So if we need a motion for something, how about deferral? I mean, I'm not faulting the applicant for what they've done. Some of it came in recently and people haven't had a lot of time to look at it. And this is maybe the first chance, and at least in a long time, to ask about some of these issues. And obviously people would be more comfortable if they had another opportunity to get feedback from you on those issues, not trying to shoot down your project or anything like that, but making sure that it's being as accommodating of the oaks and the pedestrians and everybody else as possible. So I would move for deferral.
This is Frederick Rothmeyer again. Like, I think it's very important for all of you to know that Fairfax County staff, urban forestry, is all over us on this. So it is a huge focus of theirs. It's a huge focus of us. We understand that you all are worried about it. So is county staff, so are we. and we're going to take the appropriate measures. But, you know, it's very tough to, you know, again, I think it's very important for you all to know that county staff is fully focused on this. It's not that, you know, we're going to skate by anything here.
So Bill Penniman, was your comment in a motion? Was that a motion you were making, Bill? You're on mute, Bill.
I don't know that we need a motion to defer. If we don't second a motion to approve, we're kind of saying we're deferring. But what do you think, Rob? I mean, do you want one? You're on mute now.
Sorry. So I guess, you know, either we're making a motion to take an action, or we take no action by not having a motion. It might be, you know, kind of one and the same, but I think, you know, the message to Commissioner Carter is he has to decide what to do Wednesday night with a plan of no action from the P&Z, you know, which is fine. I mean, that it's a rarity, but
Rob, this is John. I don't know if you can hear me. If Bill made a motion to defer, I second it. If he didn't make a motion to defer, then I make a motion to defer until we can.
If you make a motion to defer, I second it.
all right. So a motion to defer has been made by John, seconded by Bill Penniman. So,
Is that, can I ask a question? Is that defer with the request that they come back, or defer and we don't hear from them again?
Oh. The intention, at least my intention, would be to have them come back. Unless they persuade the Planning Commission to proceed, but that's out of my department.
But would they go on to the planning commission?
That's up to them.
yeah, they always have the ability to go on to the Planning Commission, whether we approve or disapprove or defer. And then that's up to the planning commissioners to then decide what action to take. But Michelle's point is, I guess, John, with your motion, can you clarify what defer isn't what's intended? John, not hearing from you.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yep, there you go.
Sorry, I don't know why, but I keep freezing up. Should have plenty of bandwidth here, but what's the question?
So the question was, when you say defer, your motion to defer, but defer till next meeting or another meeting with the P&Z, or what, is there some clarity?
I would recommend to defer. I make a motion to defer until the next meeting or until they're ready to view and talk about all the various items we talked about. Blue Oaks being Commissioner Carter brought up a lot of great points, as did others tonight also. I think again, this sets the groundwork for the rest of the development. It's important that we get this one right.
All right, so John froze up there a little bit, but essentially he said that, you know, it's a motion to defer to have the applicant come back and to address the concerns that were voiced here tonight.
And I'm fine with seconding that still.
Okay. So I need to try to get everybody on layout here. Try it. Well, I don't have everybody on camera, so let's
Do the hands, Rob.
on the chat, or
No, the hands at the bottom. Put your hand up if you're voting for deferral.
oh, well, not everybody's on camera, but now they're getting on camera, so
Oh, well, they don't have to be on camera to do that.
that's what I was asking you here. So say I'm sorry, Tammy.
If you, the little hand signal at the bottom of the column before the chat, or get rid of the chat, will be at the bottom of the page. The little hand signal, like I want to talk.
Yeah,
use
if we're
that for
asking
a
everybody
voter.
to use
Yeah.
that as a vote,
Correct.
does everybody know how to do that? Let's try it and use the hand signal on your in the chat here. Okay, it's populating. Okay, so this is in favor of the motion is what we're looking for in the way of hands.
In favor of voting to defer.
Yes. And I just want to make sure everybody's ability to do this.
Rob, I would vote to defer, but I found that thing before. Now I can't find it. So,
Okay.
all right.
Well, that's 9. With Dick Kennedy, it's 9.
I only count 8 now, Tammy, but
1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8. And then Dick Kennedy is 9. Penniman, Pegways, Bishali,
That's you.
Rebecca, Michelle, Katie, John Capilla, and myself.
okay, and I'm sustained. So that motion does pass because we only have 14 people here tonight. Okay, so
And Katie McLean was a yes. Yes, she voted. So we're good. And no, she didn't vote. So that would be 10 with her.
all right, so Elizabeth, it looks like the motion passed to defer the application. You know, I think you certainly heard a lot of comments tonight. Commissioner Carter can decide, you know, what to do Wednesday night. He certainly heard our comments. You've heard his comments as well. They're somewhat in concert with one another. And, you know, whether he'll be comfortable on Wednesday night to do something and move the application forward. But I guess we would welcome you to come back and, you know, take our comments to heart. And I totally get what you explained, Elizabeth, in terms of, you know, the tree preservation being part of a PI or future site plan. I think in general, because the tree preservation is also part of an FDP and when included in the FDP, it just wasn't robust enough to answer a lot of these questions that a lot of the committee members have. And I think that's the kind of the sentiment that was, you know, displayed tonight. And I get it. I think all sides are concerned about the trees, and this is going to be a tremendous development when those trees are saved. And so I know all parties are equally trying to get to the same finish line. I'll just add one final editorial comment is just when I see these master plans develop early on, it's imperative that all the utilities be looked at very carefully, including gas, electric, communications, cable, in addition to water, sewer, storm, because you'll find that those corridors tighten, especially if John narrows these roads anymore, you won't have places to put the utilities. And that is also something that wasn't completely represented as to how the ultimate development will be served and hopefully not jeopardize those trees as well. So thank you for your attendance tonight.
Well, thank you for all your comments and your time. We appreciate it very much, and we'll be in touch.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you all.
Okay, so we do have another application tonight on our agenda. And it is the Haley Rise Block C. It's another final development plan. And this is, I'm trying to search for, okay, David, you're on, correct?
Correct.
All right, so David Gill is going to present on behalf of this application. This is the first time we have seen this application, and I will let David, you know, take it from there.
Great, Rob. I really appreciate the brief introduction. My name is David Gill. I'm a land use attorney with Wiregill, and I'm here on behalf of a joint venture between a groups called Ackridge and the Meridian Group, where I'm implementing Block C of Haley Rise as an FDP. And as was mentioned in the previous case, this is an FDP. We're not changing the proffers, heights, setbacks, uses of anything that was approved with the original Haley Rise application. In fact, this is largely about trying to implement the vision that was established when the CDP and the rezoning itself was approved. With me tonight as well is Jay Johnson from the Meridian Group, as well as Pete Crawford, who's our civil engineer. In addition to that, as part of the master development, Mark Looney and Richard Firancola from Brookfield are on as well, who can answer questions primarily about why they decided to move forward with Ackridge on what we're going to show you here tonight on our FTP. Just to get some procedural questions out of the way, we were originally scheduled for December 8th in front of the Planning Commission, but we made a lot of progress with staff when we submitted this initially over the summer, and staff has asked if we're willing to move it up to November 17th for Planning Commission. We are, but that is predicated on getting our final sort of plan set back into them by the end of this week, which we're working on. So it's a great opportunity, frankly, to incorporate any final comments from you guys as well, and make sure we get the best project we can as part of this process. I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen here and bring up what we're precisely talking about. This is Block C here, outlined in pink. It is the one directly south of where the Wegmans is. So in this particular picture on the east would be Reston Parkway. You've got the existing office building, the two ponds, and frankly, just across from RA headquarters there. So just to give folks some perspective. The existing block itself is a surface parking lot that largely serves as the parking for this existing office building. And part of what the CDP talked about was replacing that parking in a shared parking garage. And I think we've done a really good job of transforming what was originally shown in the CDP as an exposed garage along the parkway, and now are wrapping it with a four-sided building. So from this perspective, you get a finished side on the north, west, south, and east sides of this block. And I'll go ahead and jump into it. This is just zooming in here. The east side is going to be a largely rental multifamily building, roughly 7 stories, but because of the grade, it really reads as 5, depending on which corner you're at, which is the high corner here at Reston Parkway, when you initially turn in on what we're calling Road A on the north side. And then it falls almost 30 feet to this corner here by the parks and the existing office on what we're calling Road D here. There would be a podium here with a plaza on it to serve these two buildings. And then on the west side is another residential building that we're talking about. What's interesting about this one is right now we think we can make this for ownership opportunities. This would not be a rental building, the Western one of the first ones in the corridor, and we're really excited about moving forward with that type of product, presuming the market holds, you know, with COVID and those type of things. But that's how we're designing it now, and the level of amenities that we're talking about with this particular application. The limits of the CDP or the FDP itself are the sidewalks around the property. We are not touching the public roads C, A, or Reston Parkway as part of this application, just to give you some additional context there as well. We'll go ahead and jump into some of the larger community elements. We brought forward the same design team that Brookfield used with the larger CDP so that we have continuity of design palettes, the types of plantings, widths of sidewalks, the type of paving that we're talking about. So this is showing what we're talking about in our pedestrian zones throughout the 4 sides of this project. These are the same furniture too that we're committing to, benches, the same milieu for the lighting, bike racks, cafe seating throughout the project, again, to mirror the public realm being established by Brookfield as part of their project. I'll try and jump through this pretty quick because I know we're running late here, Rob, but this just takes you around all 4 sides of the building. And again, it really is a 4-sided architecture. This is looking south, so almost as if you had crossed over Wegmans and we're walking down the sidewalk down Road C. On the left side would be the retail environment that we're establishing, really trying to activate this plaza with active uses. I'll show you how far down the retail goes in some of these other sites. This would be the same look looking back. The Wegmans would be up here at the corner. Our residential lobby here at this corner opposite the two parks. Our retail here and here anchored along this side of the street. This is pulled back to give you a sense for how finished we think the architecture is going to look here. A variety of textures, primarily masonry in a lot of these facades, use of balconies, and a variety of window sizes. You can see in the background a little bit of how it differentiates from the other building that will be the rental building that is wrapping their parking garage. We go ahead and jump forward again. This is the facade itself. This would be looking across Road C, so looking east in this direction. You have your retail all along here and here, and then the residential lobby here as a way to really activate this key Road C, which is our main pedestrian street. Apologize as we jump through. So this is what is thought of as directly opposite as you go up the corner. So this is Road A as you come down from Reston Parkway. So you turn in on Road A, Reston Parkway would be on the left-hand side of this picture, and it begins to show how much grade we've got to accommodate with this project as you come down to the lower corner. So what I really like what our design team done has figured out how to present pedestrian-friendly elements along here, even though there's not enough clear space to present traditional retail. So up in this location, we'll be locating our bike storage room, our dog walk station for this particular residential building, and then using a variety of frosted glass here to hide what is essentially the parking garage for the retail behind these panels here. I'll keep going through here. This is what it would look like if you were standing basically looking out from where the Wegmans was. You get your retail on the corner on the right side, come up the hill, going to Wegmans on the left. This also shows the differentiation in height between the two buildings, the two different palettes being used to distinguish the buildings themselves. Oh, apologize for that. That's a fast forward here, guys. I'll jump back. This takes you around the corner again. So this would be Reston Parkway, looking at the building from Road A. So again, it falls away to the right would be where you go to Wegmans, and then to the left as you come down Reston Parkway itself. It shows the same double row of trees committed to with the CDP FDV, as well as the trail itself that's being put in. And then what we really worked on here was providing a variety of depth and little private courtyards to break up the mass of this facade along Reston Parkway. As importantly, it helps us wrap the garage behind it, so you only see finished residential structure from Reston Parkway. There is no parking structure that you see. It is truly a four-sided building in that regard. This is how it looks from Reston Parkway as you come down. So on the right, again, would be that Road A, all the way down to the left. You can see those two courtyards that we're helping to use to break up the mass, and then additional smaller variations in the facade as you keep moving down the building. This is our entrance here to the primary residential lobby and the primary entrance on Road D to the parking structure. This parking garage is, again, shared parking for this existing office building here, as well as for the residential here. So we worked hard with staff on coming up with a design that bifurcates the residential and office uses after they park. So the office users would come in now to this shared garage, park, come down an elevator bay here, and have a dedicated pedestrian walk over to Office D. This is a segregated pedestrian entrance that is separated from the primary vehicular access right here. So if you're coming to the office building, you come down, come in here, get out, and then walk across without having to cross in front of the main pedestrian drag. There is a lay-by here as well for drop-off for the office, and then a smaller lay-by here for drop-off for the residential. This again just gives you a sense for how that would work in practice. A little bit of the lay-by is shown further down. You can jump forward. That's how we're talking about it working here. So you have the lay-by in front of the office on the left, in front of the residential on the right, and then a dedicated pedestrian crossing here. It's also going to be a raised tabletop so that it really signals to cars as they come down that they're entering a pedestrian realm, and that they need to make their decision to enter that garage now. Further down, it is essentially a service connection further down. The only thing really there is loading for the residential building itself as you go down Road D. So we're really trying to encourage that movement into the garage and make it separate from the pedestrian. This is how it looks from the existing office. If you sort of fisheye it a little bit, it's not quite 100% perspective, but again, gives you sort of a view for what we're going for. We do have this elevated courtyard up here that would provide amenities that could be shared between the two buildings and provide some nice views down onto the parks that are proposed both to the south and southwest from here. And then on the north side, there's also a jump lobby that allows you to get down and cross over to the Wegmans. This slide is something I just wanted to highlight. I think it's something you had mentioned before, Rob, about wanting to see the difference between the CDP and the FDP that we're proposing. On the left is what the CDP proposed. It was literally a gray residential building like this with a parking garage fronting on Reston Parkway. And on the right is how we're proposing to actually change that and implement it. Most importantly, shifting that parking into the center, wrapping it on all four sides, and then providing a new type of ownership product here that we think can really contribute to the activity, provide a different stratification in the market, and frankly get these streets activated and up and running quicker so that hopefully folks can start to live and work closer to the metro station and to walk and to get some of the things that have been raised by you guys in prior application. I'll keep my presentation brief there. I'll ask Jay Johnson if he has any additional comments at Meridian, but that's really what I wanted to share with you tonight. Make sure that we have any preliminary concerns from you guys addressed as we move through getting our final report from staff, which we're hopeful will be probably mid-October at the rate we're going.
No, David, on behalf of the Meridian Group and Anchorage, this is Jay Johnson. I'm an independent consultant for the two firms that David mentioned that are co-applicants on this project. It's a pleasure to be here. I think David has summed it up quite well with the presentation, and we welcome your questions.
All right. Well, thank you, Jay. Thank you, David. So, well, let's go through some comments. David, I appreciate your the graphics and everything. It's really helpful that goes along with the plans that we received. So let me try to get back to my order here. It's just easier for me to do it the same way. David and Sue, do you want to start us off?
Surely. I think the appearance of the development, the fact that you're wrapping the parking garage with residences and it's not visible is excellent. Wish more people would do that. Question I have is, and I didn't see it in your package that you sent us. Mm-hmm. What percentage of affordable housing and workforce housing are you putting into the rental building and the sale building?
Right. So the requirement overall for the project is 15% of units as WDUs, and that's what we're going to be providing between the two buildings in this case. We're not sure again if it's going to be ownership versus rental. We're designing it as if it could be ownership. That, I'll be frank, David, is going to be market dependent, but we are providing 15% of the total units as WDUs.
And those are for 15% of those are WDUs, not ADUs.
Correct. And the reason they are not ADUs is frankly by virtue of the construction type here. Both of these are exempt from the ADU ordinance. And as you know, the Fairfax County, for better or for worse, has a relatively Byzantine process for how you determine whether something is an ADU versus a WDU. But, and Mark, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think part of the commitment that Brookfield made was to go above and beyond the traditional 12% to 15% in light of the fact that a lot of these buildings, you know, our goal is to get more affordable units closer to metro.
Okay, thank you.
All right,
Um,
Sue?
Yes, I am struck by the massiveness of the residential buildings in relation to the amount of landscaping and treed areas. How much open space are you allowed?
So it is at a FDP level, and Pete Crawford, you can help me with the precise numbers here. But again, it fits into the larger Hallie Rise project. And let me see if I can page back up.
Is that by county standards?
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, they've gone above and beyond. So these parks, and Mark Looney, if you're still on, you can correct me if I'm wrong. These parks are being installed currently across the street from us, and they were intended to serve the entirety of the Haley Rise project. So
I understand.
all of the
I'm
ponds and-
I'm
Go ahead.
just reacting to the streetscape character. I'm looking at page L04B. I'm just struck by the massiveness of the buildings and lack of greenery. And I'd like to see more. In Reston, we go far beyond what Fairfax County demands for open space. And I think even though it's in TSA area, I would like to see more greenery. Also, I don't know if you're planning greenery on the rooftop.
Yeah, so on that, yes, we are looking at trying to install on this plaza an intensive green roof, and we're working with staff on precisely what we need to do to meet that objective. So we will be including that in that location.
And Sue,
And
this is
just
Mark. Let me just jump in just generally on the overall development. So the entire Hallie Rise project has a proffered conceptual development plan that includes both an open space standard as well as an urban park standard that is applicable to the development overall. And as David mentioned, there are a series of park facilities that are being provided, and you can see them on the plan here, but a lot of it is surrounding the existing stormwater management ponds that you may recall are being converted into true amenities as opposed to places to collect rainwater as part of the project. And we have kind of in the lower center portion of the screen, what's called Crescent Park, and then there are fitness facilities and dog parks and active recreation facilities that are provided both within and on either side of the ponds, kind of in the middle there. And then there is a muse that runs through the middle of the site that leads up to additional park facilities kind of across the main east-west spine road or left to right spine road, and then another urban park facility that leads over to the metro station in the upper left-hand corner of the screen here. Collectively, all of those elements exceed the urban park standards for the TSAs, as well as exceed the open space area requirements for the zoning district, the PDC zoning district. The other piece that I'll note, and you can somewhat see it on the plan here, was the comprehensive plan at the time of the rezoning required or contemplated what's described as Reston specific streetscape along certain areas of various road networks. And that is what is being provided along the Reston Parkway side of the project. And effectively what that means is it's about, and Pete Crawford, I think, is still on the phone, it's about a 50 to 60 foot setback from Reston Parkway with double plantings of trees along with the 10-foot multi-purpose shared pathway that's being, I'll say, relocated and reconstructed as part of the Wegmans development to the north, and then with this block farther south. And so all of those elements combined are what the proffered requirements are. So all we're doing with this is implementing those proffer elements as they apply to this particular block we're not reinventing the wheel specific to this block. It's part of the implementation of the overall development vision.
Just a small question on L10, your bike racks. They're architecturally very pleasing to look at, but I don't know how functional they are. If you make sure that you coordinate with FAB or other bike organizations on that.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, I think both of our goals is to get folks to use whatever modes we can to get them to and from Metro. So
okay, that's all.
That's key to us.
Thank you, Sue. In the chat, Katie was asking about the landscaping that's being represented on the plans. Is it kind of correct to the size and quantity that would be representative at the time of planting, or is it representing like a 10-year growth? Do you have any idea?
It's a great question, Rob, and I'm going to either have to defer to Pete or come back to you with that. I mean, I know that the spacing and the mount is exactly what we're proposing to plant, but as to the sizing question, let me defer to Pete Crawford on that.
Yeah, I hear you deferring to me. I actually land design as a landscape architect, so I'm not exactly sure how they rendered those trees.
So let me get back to you on that, Katie. That's a good question that I should know the answer to.
All right, if we can go to Rebecca.
Hey, everybody. So I really like how you took the topography of the site and you have the retail exposed, and I like that the garage is hidden, and I actually really like the two-tone kind of coloring of the buildings. It's attractive to me. I am a little bit concerned again, as with the other site, about like when you put in the supportive excavation and you start backfilling, you get the compaction, and then you're putting in the sidewalks adjacent to the roadways. The ability for you to get good mature tree growth with root structure, especially if compaction was required to structurally support the site. So that may be an issue that you want to evaluate as you start planning the vegetation for those areas.
Great point, Rebecca. I'll give Peter and Glenn
That's
Right.
2 hours.
Thank you, Rebecca. Just a quick reminder to mute your line when you're not talking. And let's go on to Tammy.
Thank you. I noticed, or I think I read in your plans, that you're considering putting all of the WDUs in the Tower 2, which is the rental unit. Is that an error in what you sent us? Or, I mean, I'm a little sad that some of the WDUs wouldn't be in the purchase building, which is Tower 1, which is the west building, correct?
No, that's correct, Tammy. That is what that note says, because we're still wanting to make sure that we deliver all the units. We're still deciding on that western building, whether it's going to be ownership versus rental. But you're right, that is precisely what that note says. And the reason that is because that's the building that is very likely going first. When we take down the surface, we have to build that garage first to provide that office with their replacement parking. So we'll be delivering very likely that building on the right first, and that gives us opportunity to deliver those less than market rate units up front.
Okay, so if I understand your plan correctly, the parking for building A, existing office building, is going to be in the parking structure. You're sort of building a Texas donut, right? In that parking structure and surrounding it.
I think it's a complicated Texas donut, but essentially yes, because we're providing parking that serves 2 different uses and comes out, frankly, on 2 different levels. So this would be on the first floor of the parking garage on the south side, and it actually ends up being the 3rd floor of the parking garage on this side. But yes, I mean,
Okay,
it's,
so you're separating residential parking from office parking.
well, the
within
garage
your-
itself inside will be shared, but essentially we anticipate all the office users will come in here, park on the lower levels here, and then likely residential will come in here and park on those
Okay.
levels as they come in.
So,
But there's no like gate, so you'd be
there's no gate or
Yeah.
specific, okay. And then, I read that
Sorry, Tammy,
your,
just on that, Jay, you had some clarification, I think, too, on some of the parking management you were looking at for the garage. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's correct. So Tammy, we are looking at good speed parking. It's an automated system where once you're in as a recognized parker, you park basically at any spot that's designated for that particular use at a certain time of day. So in the shared parking concept, residents are heading out to work or maybe staying, offices coming in. We've got plenty of parking, but not overparked for both uses. And it's a fully automated system. It doesn't require any gating at the entry points, either north or south. So it's a proven and tested methodology. We're already in discussions with letter of intent to get the process moving forward, and we're quite excited about it. It's actually in use locally. There's a project in Maryland that we've looked at, and there's another one in Virginia. So that's the way we're going to handle the parking.
will the retail, be parking for retail? Is that street only? Will they be able to use this garage
So
with your system?
great question. So there's a pink garage here that serves largely this residential building and the office. Underneath this building, there's actually parking behind the retail and underneath the podium that will serve the residential and the retail. So we have an entrance here to provide that immediacy that you really need to help retail be successful.
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct. Exactly.
And is on the podium, is that a swimming pool? The thing that looks like a pond, is that a swimming pool?
The current vision is a water feature. We're
Okay.
not totally determined. The idea of we call it the ridge, where we have a manufactured bifurcation between the more private, potentially owner side on the west and the rental side on the east. Those details are in progress, and we'll define those at site plan. But probably not a pool, but it could be.
Okay, so also, the garage daylights on the roof? If I followed your drawings correctly?
That is correct, but it's
Okay.
if you look at the sections in the FDP, no part of the garage is exposed above the roof line of any of the surrounding architecture.
Yeah, got that, got that.
Yeah.
So it's hidden, but it is exposed to the weather.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yes.
I saw how your breakdown is, your apartment split, because Tammy always asks this question. 76% studio and 1 bedroom, 24% 2 bedroom, 0% 3 bedroom. We are in a crossroads of what our society is going to do, and we are oversupplied with studio and 1 bedrooms, and people are now working from home. And if you have a couple in a 1 bedroom and with what are your square footages? I'm concerned about people going berserk, especially renters who are working from home and are in a tight little space and don't have ton of amenities within a building. And then granted, Brookfield will have amenities around and you have a great grocery store across the street, yippee. But if you're not going out to work, I caution the wisdom of this breakdown of 76% 0 and 1 bedroom and 24% 2 bedroom. That's just a rhetorical editorial comment.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
The
Tammy,
stormwater
excuse me,
management
this is David Bennell. Could I just pile on there for a minute? Concerning affordable housing or workforce housing, there is a larger demand in workforce housing for 2 and 3 bedrooms than there is for 0 and 1 bedrooms. So I would wholly endorse Tammy's idea that you reconfigure that.
Yeah, and do you have a
Larger
square
apartments.
footage per unit that you can tell us what it is?
Jay, do we have that from the architectural side yet that you're aware of?
You know, we are currently evolving the final unit mix as we go through the schematic design process. So what I can tell you is we have a unit cap of 480 units, and we have a gross square footage cap that counts towards FAR for the units and the retail. So to the extent that our market research has directed us to the unit mix that you refer to, we're not stuck on that. We're constantly looking at what the best solution is. At some point in our design process, we will have a go, no-go point where we have a unit plans and a mix set at schematic design. So when we affect the construction of the building, we're committed. The last thing we want to do is get that wrong. So I certainly appreciate the comments. We will always go back to our market experts and try to make sure we're doing the right thing for the market, and we'll move forward from there.
Yeah, I mean, we've got way too many high rental priced DUs rentals in Reston, and you can check the rental, the capacity of how many units have been rented in the existing buildings to see that. So please keep your sharp eye on that for your client. I'm very concerned about stormwater management. What are you doing here? Because we have this plaza on the podium. That ain't gonna do nothing. That can't leak through down into the garage. Do you have vaults? Where are you? Is this stuff supposed to run into the ponds?
So,
I mean, I don't quite understand how you're handling. You've almost completely put non-permeable services on this whole lot C, and you're going to have a problem with that water. Where is it going, and do you have vaults, or how are you handling that?
well, Tammy, I appreciate that comment. Pete has stuck around. He's also our engineer. He's been the engineer of record for the entire master plan, and he can speak to that. There is a overall working with quantity and quality in the ponds to the south of the site, and we have a determination for that. The work that we are doing on the plaza, I hate to use the word voluntary, it is. So it's an intensive green approach to this plaza area, but I'll defer to Pete to give you some of the more specifics of the history.
Sure. So this is Pete Crawford with Urban Engineering. Just to sort of take a step back, the current site of Block C is an existing parking area. So this area is a majority of existing impervious area. The entire Haley Rise, Reston Crescent development is designed to be treated in the 2 wet ponds on the south side of the property, which includes Block C. So Tammy, to answer your question, no new underground vaults or detention with this particular block, because in accordance with good guys, there's a comprehensive stormwater management plan for the entire development as opposed to doing it individual block by block. That pond is actually oversized.
Pete, pardon me 1 second. David, can you back out to the overall master plan just so we have the illustrative in front of us? There we go. Thank you.
And so that pond not only treats our site, it treats off-site properties as well. But that pond is actually over capacity by more than 25%. It's actually 40% larger than it otherwise would need to be to meet minimum standards. So those ponds go above and beyond any code minimum for both the rate of runoff and also for the phosphorus removal for this Haley Rise site.
Okay, I thought I was hallucinating when David was talking about the amenities that are non-retail on the street right opposite the Wegmans, the north side of this building. Did he say dog walking or dog washing?
That's my enunciation issues. Dog washing station inside
Thank
the
you.
building
Because I
itself.
thought dog
Yeah.
walking. Are you
No,
serious? Do we
it's
have a
not a
tread?
doggy treadmill or anything. No.
Okay. All righty.
We have a dog wash and a bike room there on
Yes.
the north
Yes.
side.
Okay. Good. All righty. So where I believe that Mark said that the dog walking park, the poop park, are adjacent to the two ponds. Is that correct? Because we're talking 480 apartments. If you're going with that number, you're talking 300 dogs or more. Where are we walking these dogs? It's getting to be a sanitary hazard.
So the dog park area is, you can't really blow it up on this plan, but I believe we had looked at it in two different locations, one to the left of building A, just south of the site, and then a second site to the left of building B, over on kind of the far left-hand side of the site. I believe, and Rich, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that where we ultimately landed with it was down along the lower left-hand side near Sunrise Valley Drive as that
That's correct.
location, and a
Yeah,
fitness
that's correct,
center
Mark.
at
It's
the
at
other
the far,
location.
yeah, it's the far southwestern corner of the property. It's
Right.
actually under construction right now and will be delivered before the first apartments open at the Edmond, which is the Wegmans building, right there, exactly. And we have a fitness park under construction just below Block C as well, which is almost complete as well.
Okay, and then one more question about your tree spec. I noticed that some of those species were not native. There's Japanese maples in there. Was that an error, or are you aware that Reston wants native plants, not, hybrids or non-natives?
If it short answer is yes, we're aware you want the native species, and that's what we've been working with staff to get their list
Okay.
of native
And I don't want to, second guess a landscape architect, for God's sake, but river birch, when we're getting warmer, they're not surviving around here now. And so I just noticed these kinds of things. I'm very concerned. I know we don't have time tonight to go into the crosswalk across Reston Parkway and the no crosswalk, and it's probably not your venue anyway, on across Reston Parkway on the north side of the Sunrise Valley Reston Parkway. But those are things that I think we're all going to be real concerned about. I was flipped out when I saw a mid-block crosswalk on these drawings. I don't remember how that was ever okayed or even discussed. We've been trying to figure out how to get people across Reston Parkway and Wheatley. And so anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Rashali?
Hey, Rob, before we jump in to somebody else, let me go back to Rebecca's question about the soil compaction. There's actually a proffer that was agreed to as part of the overall CDP and proffers that require addressing soil compaction as part of construction, and to deal with it, I believe, down to 12 inches below the surface. And so there's already an existing proffer commitment that is applicable to all blocks, not just this one, to deal with soil compaction in the event that it addresses it. So I didn't want her to think that we weren't addressing it already. It's just not, it doesn't have to be called out separate and independent for this block, because it's applicable to all other blocks in addition to this one.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate you bringing that up.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, Rashali.
Yes, I had a couple of questions and just a couple of comments. Definitely agree with Tammy's comment about native landscaping. Make sure, we urge you to really consider using native species. So to the extent that you can, please consider that. Another question I had was with regards to the parking. Have you considered any parking reductions, being that this complex would be pretty close to the future metro station? Has that been considered at all?
Rashali, that's a great question, and Mark can kick me under the virtual table if I'm saying this wrong, but the shared parking garage and the overall, let me put it this way, there's an overall parking reduction for Haley Rise overall. For purposes of the FTP, we have to show how we meet the zoning ordinance minimum for this particular FTP. But for the site overall, we will have less parking than required by the ordinance at the end of the day when it's fully implemented. Mark, do you have any additional color you could add to that?
That's correct. I mean, there's an overall parking reduction that's applicable to the other blocks in the development, and reduces the overall parking. And so by utilizing the shared parking garage here, we're able to share off-peak the office and residential demand within the garages. And so, or the one large garage, the office workers won't have an opportunity to park in the private garage beneath the for sale building. But we're utilizing the shared arrangements to try to minimize the amount of parking that's constructed on this particular block. And then beyond that, there's a parking reduction on the other blocks.
Okay. And then which other blocks, I know this is in the future, but which other blocks do you think you will have that reduction?
I believe it's applicable. I believe it's applicable to everything except the Wegmans block, and it applies to all of the other uses to be built. I can't remember the exact percentage. I want to say it's 6 or 8% off the top of my head, but it's in that neighborhood in terms of the reduction. And just so you're aware, there's FDP approval on 2 additional blocks beyond this one. The first is block D, which is the one immediately to the left of the block that we're talking about now. There's a plus or minus 100,000 square foot office building, and then a residential building farther to the west that has FDP approval. And then directly across the street, the middle block, that's block G, that is an office building, and that also has FDP approval already. So the only 2 blocks that don't have FDP approval in terms of future development is the large block H, which is the one kind of in the upper left-hand corner closest to the circle. That is a combination of office and hotel and residential. And then there's office and residential on that block. And then there's an additional building that could be built fronting the existing parking structure immediately to the south. And that doesn't have FDP approval as well.
Okay, great, thank you. Did I hear it correctly that there aren't any additional planned stormwater structures for practices other than the, utilizing those ponds? I'm not sure if I heard that correctly. Is that what the plan is for this whole development? Or are
This
these
is Pete Crawford with Urban. There is a vegetated roof that's being implemented above and beyond the existing facilities.
Okay, and that's you mean for this particular block C?
That's correct.
Okay, all right, great. All right. So what sustainability goals does this particular block have? Any lead tracking?
So yes, as required by the proffers, we have to achieve the green building standards that were identified, which include either LEED Silver equivalent or other certification process. But I believe Earthcraft is the typical residential one at this time.
Okay. All right. And any considerations for putting solar on the buildings?
Fair question. I'm not sure we're quite there yet. Jay, I don't know if you have any other thought on that.
No, there's no consideration for that at this time.
And is that mainly because of the structure, the construction type, or is there any other reason?
Well, to be honest with you, I've been developing for quite some time, and for a commercial application for either certainly the condominium regime or a multifamily regime, I haven't seen it done yet. Not to say it couldn't be done,
Hmm.
but it's not something that we've explored or looked at for aesthetics. I mean, that's always a concern. The panels could be quite high, and depending on the orientation, they might be well above the parapet around the roof. But to be direct with you, no, we haven't considered it for this development, and it's not on our plan.
Okay. And then I'm sure some of my colleagues will ask about this. Have you provided any infrastructure or are you planning for any electric vehicle charging in the parking garage?
We are. There's a proffer requirement. I'm not sure the exact whether we may go above that, but we'll certainly meet the proffer requirement for the EV. And there's a certain type of charge that has to be installed. That's already been incorporated into the vision guidance with the architect, and it's part of the plans already.
Okay. Will you be able to tell me what percentage that might be, the total parking?
So the immediate requirement is 2% of the spaces have to be immediately available. And then there is an additional proffer obligation that requires pulling additional conduit in to be able to expand that into the future.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.
Okay, thank you. I do commend you all for, providing us with a design that doesn't have just a parking garage fronting Reston Parkway. So definitely happy about that. Thank you. That's all for me.
Thanks, Rashali. How about Bill Penniman?
Following up on a couple of things you just talked about on the EV charging, Mark, you said that there was, in addition to the 2%, there is an obligation in terms of conduits for pulling future lines. Where was that? I don't think I've ever seen that in one of your proffers. It's a great idea.
Sorry, I was chuckling as I was listening to you. Let me go back and confirm it, Bill, in terms of the exact language. But I think my recollection is that the 2% requirement was put in there as the minimum, and then there was an expansion capability into the future. I don't know the exact percentage. Let me look at it, and we'll get you the exact language.
Okay, well, let me turn to a comment on that, and then one other question. Just in terms of the comment, it's national policy now that we get to 50% new vehicles to be electric vehicles by 2030. So any building that's going to last is going to need to have at least the raceways and panel space capacity available to expand to serve. And so I would like to see you come back with some further information on how you can do that. My own feeling is there ought to be at least 50% expansion capacity because that's going to be needed well before the building life is done, and it's vastly more expensive to add later. And I particularly wonder how it would work with the condos if you put in 2% and residents down the road want more. What on earth is the ability of an individual resident to start installing new capacity? I think it's essential that you have a minimum expansion capacity for virtually everybody in an owner-occupied building. So I will put that out, and I think you'll be coming back. But I would like, if not, you should come back, because I'd like to know the answer to that. You can just end up with a complete train wreck EV capacity in a condo-owned building without some kind of clear, cheap rules to getting it expanded.
William, those are great comments. I do appreciate it.
Okay.
Hard look at it.
In terms of the solar, you're going to have your parking lot exposed to the sky, and your residents or office building users who park on the roof would greatly appreciate the shade that would be provided by solar. And you can use the energy that comes from it for common uses, common areas for, a lot of uses beyond delivering it to all the individual units. So I would ask you to go back and relook at that. There are a lot of places that have been putting solar on parking lots, including in buildings. And, it would burnish your credentials and lower your costs in the long run. One other question. Actually, just wondering, for a building of this sort, what are you going to, is it all electric? Are you planning for combustion-based heating and cooling? Expensive, dirty?
I am, pardon me? I'm fairly certain that we're looking at all electric. The exception may be that if we go for sale with the West Tower, we may put in gas cooktops for those units. But certainly for the
don't do that. The indoor air pollution from gas cooktops is terrible. Put in the induction cooktops. They're just as fast and they're vastly cheaper to operate. And there are some finally coming back to where the prices were a few years ago. But induction would be a vastly better solution.
Okay.
No safety hazards. No safety hazards, nothing. The residential courtyard on the platform, that courtyard, is that strictly for residents?
Yeah, Bill, it will be elevated 2 stories up above the sidewalk, depending on which side you're at.
Okay. And then the last question is, if you turn the building that has retail into the condo-owned dwelling units, I mean, you use your own dwelling units and you set up presumably condo association to run it. How does it work for the retail on the bottom? Is every move by a retail operator subject to the vote of 100 residents upstairs, or do they have their own separate association? Just wondering how that would work. It could be terrible.
You ask a good question, Bill. Frankly, it's somewhat similar. Well, I mean, Lake Ann's probably not the best example, but
no, don't tell me it's gonna be like Lake Ann.
But the retail will be its own unit under the regime and have its own set of rules for how it contributes to the common area charges for the rest of the site. So,
but apart from how it contributes to just how it conducts its business, makes changes, redesigns, is that all subject to the vote of the dudes upstairs?
Very likely not. I mean, it's going to be
not.
treated as its own unit, and same with the residential. But
and actually, one last question: your public road A, which is between you and the Wegmans, is there going to be a light there?
Good question, Mark. I'm going to have to defer to you on that.
Yeah, Mark, I can jump on that unless you've got it.
No, go ahead.
Dismissed. Pardon me?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, so that was already brought forth with Brookfield to VDOT, and the light was just dismissed out of turn, that it wasn't warranted. So if you want to jump on that, Mark Moore, someone from Brookfield, that was a proffer condition. It had to be examined and reviewed prior to, I believe, use and occupancy for buildings on or units on Block F to the north, William. And
just to be clear, you're talking about the Reston Parkway intersection, or
yes.
Are you talking about the main intersection?
No, the Reston Parkway intersection with A. Because you also have your crosswalk there.
Yeah, the crosswalk graphic may be misleading, but my understanding is all that, Mark, was dismissed, and it's not going to happen. They're not going to break the meeting. There's no light. There's no crosswalk.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. That's it for my questions.
Thank you, Bill. All right. William Pegas.
Sure, yes, thank you. Well, first, when I look at where you're listing your concept plan schedule, which starts showing up on LO6, there's a lot of non-native plants there. And Reston is really moving to say they want to see only native plants native to Fairfax County for any new planting at all. I mean, that's coming out very strongly. So I have to echo Tammy's comments. I don't have as much trouble with the river birch because it can really go to 4 to 9 and for its zones. But I think the real problem with the river birches around here has to do with the soil conditions and when there's a lot of rain and the water can't really drain away from it. I mean, it loves being in swamps and near water and erosion control and that kind of thing. But it doesn't do well with the kind of soils that we have here in Reston. Anyway, that's that, but I really want to see all of these non-native plants just simply disappear. The other thing is that though you say you have a vegetated roof, one of the statements you have here in the letter is that where it states here on the cover letter, rather the FDPA is focused on final architecture and design. So what we see here is like roofs apparently are not an architectural element because they don't show up anywhere. So we really can't tell where the extent or location of the vegetated roofs are. And the comment about code compliance and the water in the lakes is that code compliance really need to understand that that's the absolute minimum. It's not a basis of design for, I guess you would say, quality. You go above code because code is like, that's the minimum you can do. You have to do that. You can do more, and vegetated roofs can do more for you. It's like, why put water into those ponds even though they may be able to take it when you don't have to put it there at all? And the roofs can do a lot for you. It doesn't matter what kind of structure system we have here. It could be wood, it could be metal, it could be concrete. You can put a vegetated roofs on all of those, and it will do a lot for you. Even the most minimal ones will lower the temperature of your roof membrane drastically. I mean, on a 72 degree sunny day, a white roof is 110 degrees. The top of the soil level of a vegetated roof with only a minimum 3-inch high sedum on it is 71. So that can be a big difference to your HVAC system, especially for the people living on the top floor. Those are my primary comments. I'll have to echo everything else that Tammy said. And also what Mr. Penniman said about the cooktops. Gas is not the way to go. The real thing that's really happening is not gas. The real good thing is induction systems. And they have really come a long way lately. They were up and they were down. And now they're really beginning to rise again. So it's an all electric system. Whirling magnets are fun. So, and then also the amount of coverage for the future of electric vehicles really needs to be looked at, especially as it relates to the condominiums. How do you deal with those people? You need to be able to provide something when someone sells their unit to someone else down the road. It's maybe 10 years from now or whatever. And, you know, if you have an electric vehicle, you need an electric socket. So that's basically what I have to be in a nutshell there. And those are pretty much like ironclad for me. I just I can't deal with the non-native vegetation and the vegetated roofs being like not even represented at all.
All right, thank you, William. John?
Hey,
K.
Rob, real quick before you move on, let me clarify something that I answered in response to Bill about the traffic signal. The traffic signal at Reston Parkway and Road A is the one that VDOT has said at the moment, or let me rephrase that they don't want, period. There is a separate proffer that deals with a traffic signal at the intersection of Road C and Road A, which is the intersection of the east and west north spine road. There's not a requirement at the moment to install that signal. But the way the proffer reads is that the final determination as to whether a signal goes in at that particular intersection is not made until you reach the last new building in the development. So just because it's not warranted with this building doesn't mean that it couldn't be warranted and installed with a future building once traffic builds up. So I just want to make sure that we're clear as to sort of the question that we're answering on this topic. And then in response to the green roof question, I'll just remind folks who were around in 2018 when we talked about this that, and I'll use a technical term when I say this, Brookfield is investing a crap ton of money in enhancing the lakes and ponds as amenities for the development, putting seating around the ponds, putting other extensions into the water, trying to make them usable amenities that are more than just stormwater ponds. And obviously, part of the attraction of a pond is that it not look like Lake Powell or Lake Mead, where it's 30% below its typical capacity, to where you have mud and dirt and other things showing up because there's not enough water flowing into the pond. So part of the challenge with all of this has been balancing the fact that those ponds exist and utilizing them as amenities versus some of the things that Bill was talking about in terms of the environmental goals. And so the air was on the side of ensuring that these ponds were attractive, given that they exist today and are trying to be amenitized, versus restricting the water flow into them in a way that potentially affected their attractiveness as amenities going forward. And that's the balancing act that we've struck from the beginning.
Thanks, Mark. All right, John.
I feel like you just mesmerized us all. Can you hear me okay, Rob?
John, you're a little hard to hear.
Better now?
Not really.
Well, okay, I agree with most of the comments already, or all the comments. I do think we need to do a better job of providing. I think you can tell by looking at some of the existing developments we've missed about in the past, so I do think we need to along Reston Parkway. And I think Sue made a comment about the building facade along Reston. And I know they're working, breaking that up, but that is a very long facade. I think some further investigation. Really be interested in what some.
So, John, unfortunately, we're hearing every couple words, not full sentences. So, if you have anything else, you can maybe put it in the chat.
Got it. Thanks.
Let's move on to Commissioner Carter.
I think you missed a few people, Rob.
Oh, he was just next on the list. Sorry, Michelle, do you want to go?
Sure, happy to. So where will the children play?
In terms of where are the parks, or is that the question, Michelle?
Yeah, the children who live in this building, where will they play? Because it seems there's just that one small area that may have a water feature, maybe a pool. Where will they play?
Our hope would be they can utilize the parks being installed across the street.
You mean, so the ponds, are the ponds going to have any type of protection.
Sorry, yeah, I'm trying to highlight the areas. I'm talking about these
Yeah,
parts here.
the fitness park and the park on the west side of the entry road.
Either of those, I mean, are those playgrounds? When you say fitness parks, I assume that's more meant for adults.
There's playground elements in to the left-hand side of that park. So there's an open lawn area. There's some playground equipment that goes in there. There's we have a proffered level of, I'll see if I can describe it, but there's a proffered level of commitments, and that's actually being constructed or will be constructed shortly. And so all of that will be in place before these units are delivered. And then up to the north, across from the Wegmans, to the west of the Wegmans is another park facility up there. And so there's a combination of parks that are provided across the development that include active and passive recreation areas, along with the descriptions of kind of what elements go into there. And there's some active things like volleyball courts and other things that will be provided as part of it. So it's a combination of kind of active and passive things at multiple different locations across the property.
Yeah, it does. It seems like that. I mean, this whole site is adding a lot of density, and I think it would be very difficult for children to maneuver this site and to actually be able to live here. And I mean, I think play is just an incredibly important part of children's upbringing and just the notion of being able to live in Reston. It certainly isn't provided within this specific block. I don't know what can be done though, given that you're attempting to put so many units, certainly right there.
But understand that that was intentional, right? It was intentional to concentrate these things. I mean, my yard doesn't have a playground separate and apart from the neighborhood park, right? So part of this is it was done intentionally to be able to co-locate those facilities in a place where multiple development sites and multiple buildings could take advantage of larger facilities, as opposed to a series of smaller facilities that were, I'll say, inconsistent in their design and not responsive, I'll say, to multiple sites. That was the intent behind it.
Mark, to echo that, I think Proffer 34 has a great narrative on the various parks, their function, when they need to be delivered, and that whole concept of a master plan community that you just referred.
Right.
Mhm. How will children be protected from falling into the ponds? I mean, is there any protection there, or it's
Yeah,
just
there's fencing and other elements. I mean, it's to be it's not just children that might fall in there, I guess is my point. So there's other elements that will protect them. There's landscaping and other things to try to protect them.
And I'm sorry, I did just miss it. I think Tammy had said that, and others had mentioned too. So the turn into the site a little bit north of this block, is that the one where there will not be a light, or how will pedestrians walking on Reston Parkway avoid getting hit by cars turning in and out?
It's the same condition that exists today. It's a right in, right out on Reston Parkway, which is what exists today.
Okay. And so pedestrians will just stand and wait, I guess, right? There's no, or the traffic will be held back.
Right now, there's a dedicated free flow lane that does that turns the right onto westbound Road A, and that condition will change to a shared through and right at that location, if memory serves me correctly. Pete, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because that's already been constructed today as part of Wegmans. And so the existing trail that runs parallel to Reston Parkway is being reconstructed in a different configuration along that entire frontage. And so
Great.
it's the same condition that exists today. It's just in a relocated fashion.
Yeah, I think, I think that it does seem concerning though, that with additional traffic, both pedestrian and vehicles going in and out, just to have the free flow and then also have pedestrians going and cyclists going up and down Reston Parkway. I think that's concerning. I think we also saw something similar proposed on part of Wheelie, and I'm certainly not in favor of that. And then the mid-block crossing over Reston Parkway, can you guys explain that one that was in the that's in the design?
So I'll jump in and say that the proffers required us to explore with FCDOT and VDOT whether a signalized intersection at that location that would be 3 or 4-way intersections, because there's a driveway access to the Reston Heights development directly across the street from that, was feasible and advisable. And the short answer is that it's not. Largely, I don't say largely, but in part because the toll road exit ramp from eastbound Dulles Toll Road onto southbound Reston Parkway ends essentially at the property line to the north of the property. So the kind of that far upper right-hand corner of the Halley Rise development. And the condition coming off of the toll road is effectively a free flow condition. And so there's not enough spacing between where the toll road ramping system ends and that intersection. And so VDOT wouldn't allow for that connection. So the crosswalk that's shown here, it's not going to be built, is the short answer. Or at least not going to be built with this development. I can't foreclose VDOT or FCDOT doing something in the future, but it's not proposed or to be constructed with this project.
Okay, I echo the same comments that others have already stated tonight. I think it would also be great to just see some more trees or greenery around the building on the interior sides. And I do have serious concerns about the free flow in on Reston Parkway. And I'm sorry, I do think it's going to be very difficult for children to maneuver and this site, but maybe also the intention is that there won't be as many kids here. I don't know, but it would be nice to see it differently. Thank you.
All right, Richard Kennedy.
Hi, Rob. I'm just simply going to, without repeating the, emphasize the two comments that have been made. One on affordable housing, and things are kind of up in the air. I haven't had a chance to recently read what is stated. I heard the word 15%. That would probably be a good working number, but the county is going to be committed to getting as much we as fairly can get commitments for in terms of affordable housing. There's hopefully going to be a lot more money in dealing with some of those issues as well. Secondly, in our cluster, Waterview cluster, I've lived for 30 years. I used to be a young person there, and now one of the old guys. We constantly hear talk about, well, how are we with new people coming in, younger people coming in? Well, what about electric cars? Well, where are we going to be able to find a place to refurbish our electric cars, and how is that going to? So I can't help but think that a new developer would be very well served if they could advertise that we're doing the minimum at least, but we have built in the infrastructure. Bill Penniman makes some great arguments toward that. I would just emphasize that as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Richard. Jake, I know you're on, I think, by phone. Any comments? Still see Jake muted. All right, I think I got everybody. Shelley had to drop off. So I'm going to move on to Commissioner Carter.
Okay, I'll be fairly brief. After my comments on the last one, in Reston, we have 2 access points to Metro in Wheelie, 2 sides in Town Center, and 1 side in Herndon Monroe. This is probably the best of all of those in terms of ease of pedestrians getting to the Metro station. We spent a lot of time at the zoning time to get that done properly. But this one has the details. It has the double ramps for the handicapped as opposed to single. It has street trees. The placement, at least it looks real. By the way, I'm not sure there's such a thing as a native street tree in Fairfax. It has tight turning radii. It has that raised tabletop. It has the setback from Reston Parkway, although I'm interested in what Michelle was saying. That was the one departure from being able to get to pedestrians there. So that's pretty good. The subdivision of streets, I think that's pretty much automatic here, so we don't have to say much about it since Street A is a public street, as well as that north-south street is a public street. So those probably would be on the maintained by the public sector. Also, this one has a little bit of addressing the issues that we found with COVID, with our pandemic. It is a live workplace. You're going to be right across the street from office buildings. It has the pickup and drop off areas that we're finding that are necessary. It has that jump lobby, so you can get to the street from different places. And then it has the parking, has direct access for different uses. So the retail, the office, and the residential. So this one addresses being able to move around. On the stormwater management, when you present to the planning commission, I think you should present what's over and above the normal required, and both in the ponds, but also other areas. You said there's a green roof there, so maybe that would help. And let's see, I had one more. Oh, the charging stations. I've forgotten whether this is the case where there is no assigned parking. Do you remember, Mark? Is there assigned parking, or is it the parking is a first come, first serve?
I mean, overall, let me back up. Currently, there's no assigned parking. The Wegmans block developed to the top. The retail parking is in one garage. The residential parking is another garage. In this particular block, one garage will be shared office and residential, and the other one would be dedicated solely to the residential and retail. The other blocks don't have, at present, any assigned parking to them, although we anticipate as future blocks develop, that will start to change. But it's, if that answers your question.
Well, sometimes we think of each unit having its own parking, and of course, then you would get into the charging station for each one. It may be a better solution where you would have banks of charging stations where each unit doesn't get its own, but you have banks that like you have in a shopping center now that we have, like Plaza America.
To your point, John, the parking spaces are unbundled from the sale or lease, so you're not necessarily buying or renting a parking space when you buy or lease a unit. Those are decoupled. And so you have to pay extra for a parking space, whether you're buying or I mean, I don't want to get into what Jay and Ackridge and Meridian are planning, but the proffers say that that's not what you're supposed to do, to decouple the parking space from the unit above.
You've got it right, Mark.
Yeah, so that's interesting twist on the charging stations. And the last, this might be useful at the Planning Commission. I don't know about this building, but your whole approach to sustainability is interesting. You have a wood office building, so Brookfield is attempting to address carbon sequestration more than any other project has in the area. So less of the solar panels and things like that, but more on carbon sequestration, which is probably one of the most effective things that you can do, particularly in construction. So maybe if that's still highlighted in your project, I know you do have the one wood building that's coming to this group later on, but I suspect you have a overall approach to sustainability that was probably a little under presented and from an overall standpoint, maybe less on this block, but from the overall, it might be more convincing. So that's enough for me.
Thank you, John. I think I got everybody. Please speak up if you feel I've missed you. I do want to say, you know, David, Mark, you know, and Jay, appreciate the, you know, the presentation tonight. You know, I think the treatment along Reston Parkway certainly is greatly appreciated from the fact of the hidden garage, and we're seeing the units. I think, you know, you heard some concerns about the massing of the building, the size of the building. I did appreciate in the FDP, you know, the commitment to the different materials that's specified in the articulation on the building and the undulation in some areas, and hope that could be further committed to break up this mass, because it's a pretty massive building along not only Reston Parkway but Road A, and you know, really all the roads. The more you can break that up, the better. But so obviously a lot of comments tonight, and I think we just ask you to take those into consideration and come back to us. Sounds like you know, whether that's October or November, we'll have to look at the calendars and figure out the right strategy to meet your planning commission date. Any, David, you want to finish off here?
Yeah, it's a school night, so I'll keep it short here, but I really appreciate everyone's comments. We can certainly get back to a lot of folks, I think, on some of the very good comments raised. It also helped once we get final development conditions from staff, so we can precisely answer some of those questions, especially as to the non-native species, as well as stormwater commitment and EV and vegetative growth. Those were the highlights. I'm sure we can come back to you with more details.
Great. Well, we really appreciate that. Well, we thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And we will let you guys go. And
hey, Rob, I think we have to look at October with a November 17th date. So if I'm not mistaken, you would be meeting in November after that date, or does that sound right, David? We would
yeah,
love
I mean,
to be back.
that's what Katie Quinn and staff has offered of is November 17th, and we'd love to be able to take advantage of that. So if October's at all open, we promise we'll get the staff development conditions to you and the staff report too.
Yeah, we have an open date in October to have you, so that should work.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you. So as far as the rest of the committee is concerned, again, we had a couple of administrative items on the list, but it's, you know, it's pretty late now. I suggest that I'll send out an email to talk a little bit more about some of the suggestions that we have going forward administratively. We have made a few updates to the website, which thanks to Jake, did a great job at adding a few things. And trying to give applicants a little bit more direction as to how they need to present information to us. Tammy, to your point, electronically, we do want to make that as a requirement now. And we want to make improvements to the website. We'd like to actually get a new website. We're just trying to figure out how to do that, you know, especially with our big budgets that we have here on the P&Z committee. So we'll just have to noodle through that. But Jake's been greatly supportive of helping on that IT side. So stay tuned. We want to modernize. We want to make sure we're providing access. I mean, I think the big thing is finding portals for the community and people to gain access to the same information we have. And you know, ideally, it'd be nice that we all have a place to go and maybe even share information. We just don't have the robust website yet to do that. So, and we'll figure that out. I think from the videoing of our meeting standpoint, I think the best example I heard was to probably post those on YouTube is probably the easiest thing to do for us, given its file sizes and some limitations that we have via some other suggestions. So stay tuned. It's a work in progress. And if there's any parting words, or I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And thank you, Rob. For the good
Thank
work
you, everybody, for your patience tonight. There were good comments and, you know, good applications. We'll just work through it.
Thank you.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night, and thank you.
Thank you, Jose.
Thanks, Jose.